You have entered the Command Zone, your destination for all aspects of Elder Dragon Highlander. Enjoy your stay.
What's up, everybody? You're watching / listening to the Command Zone podcast. I am one of your hosts today, Jimmy Wong.
And I'm your other host, Rachel Weeks.
Yay! It's the Rachel, Jimmy, Wombo combo.
Yeah.
Rachel Reeks, Wimmy Jong. I like it.
Yeah, we're representing the W's.
The W's. Today we're going to be looking at the monocolored commanders that are available from All Will Be One on Phyrexia. We covered the multicolored commanders. You can check out that episode. It's already on our podcast page. But there's going to be some exciting ones to talk about, including one that some people believe is insta-ban worthy. Ooh. Before we get into it, you might want to get that insta-ban worthy card because I don't think it's getting banned by heading on over to cardkingdom.com/command. That's our affiliate link for Card Kingdom. They have a huge inventory to get the cards you need in a single package delivered right to your doorstep. We love Card Kingdom. They have one of the best game stores in the country, and they also have great inventory. They have great customer service. They also have buyback programs. You can enter in the deck list and just see all the options pop up right in front of you and do all of your shopping really quickly and in one place. That you cannot beat the convenience of that. So head on over to cardkingdom.com/command, support the show, and get the cards you need.
Yeah, and when you're getting those cards, you're going to need some sleeves to put them in. You're going to need a deck box to put those in. You're going to need a playmat to put your cards onto. You're going to need dice to track your counters. Go to ultrapro.com/command for all of the Magic accessory needs that you have. They have all of the official Magic art, so you can get the characters you know and love. You can get your commanders on a playmat, on a deck box, on sleeves, and you can really represent your squad, especially in the war that has come.
Yeah. Many wars.
Are you Team Phyrexian or Team Rebel?
I'm Team Craig Blanchett. So wherever that puts me, I'm right there.
Jimmy's completed.
Yeah.
Help me.
Yeah. You know, one thing Ultra Pro won't get you, though, is other players to play with. You can't buy that, but you can meet them by going to an event like Game Nights Live at MagicCon Philly. That's going to be happening this year. MagicCon Philly. We're really excited. February, I think, 17th to the 19th. Yep. Rachel's going to be there. I'm going to be there. Josh's going to be there. And a lot of our staff is going to be there. We're going to be selling stuff. We're also going to be putting on Game Nights Live, which was a huge hit at MagicCon Vegas. So this is our first trip out to the East Coast. We would love to see you all there. Get your tickets now if you get the chance. Lots of different tiers and stuff to get them at. And there's just going to be tons of Commander all weekend long, as well as great vendors, great play opportunities, and chances to meet us, have us sign your stuff, all that good stuff. Game Nights Live, MagicCon Philly, February 17th to the 19th. Don't miss it.
Yeah, and if you're not already, come support us on patreon.com/commandzone. All of our patrons help make this content possible and better and cooler, so make sure you go over there.
Not about cooler, but definitely better.
I think they make it cooler, and this patron certainly makes it cooler.
That's right. This week's episode is dedicated to Danny Mercado.
Thanks, Danny.
Thanks, Danny. You rock. Okay, All Will Be One. This is the only set release this year. It's kind of crazy that they just put it out there like that.
They really condensed it down.
That's why there are 17 new monocolored legendary creatures. Here's the thing. We're doing this with more of our set reviews because there's just so many cards. We will not have the time to cover every single one of them. Some of them, by the way, are not super like, wow, check this out. We're going to really focus on the ones that we want to talk about today. And then we're actually dedicating an entire episode to the Dominus cycle of legendary creatures. So that's coming up soon, right, Rachel?
Yeah, those are going to be great. Those can be great in the Command Zone, but also in the 99. So we wanted to make sure we talked about them in both. So stay tuned for the Dominus episode.
Yeah, but right now we're covering the cards that we think are the most worth it for discussion for Commander as legendary commanders, as well as just creatures that may be very good in the 99. So we're going to skip a few of those old ones. But hey, look, if you want to talk about them, mention them in the comments. Find us on Twitter. You know where to go.
We want to hear about it.
Yeah, all right. Let's jump into it.
Our first one's a doozy. We're going in Wooburg order today, which means we're starting with the one, the only, Elesh Norn, Mother of Machines. If you haven't seen her yet, she's 4 and a white for a legendary creature Phyrexian Praetor with Vigilance. She's a 4/7. It says, if a permanent entering the battlefield causes a triggered ability of a permanent you control to trigger, that ability triggers an additional time. And permanents entering the battlefield don't cause abilities of permanents your opponents control to trigger.
Okay, so Josh played this on our Phyrexian Praetors episode of Game Nights.
To great effect.
Absolutely stomped. So let's talk a little bit about the ruling here first, because there is a distinction. The text it's a lot, right? Each magic card seems like it's a dictionary these days, but there's a lot of nuance here. So let's talk about that.
So just a reminder, this first ability is basically a panharmonicon, but it's for all of your permanents. So it's whenever a land enters, whenever a creature enters, anything enters the battlefield, your stuff will trigger twice. But making sure that you know what is a trigger and what isn't is really important with building Elesh Norn and playing her. So you know something is a triggered ability that will be doubled or prevented by Elesh whenever it says when or whenever something happens. That is a trigger. If it says it enters as, generally that means it just happens. It's just there's nothing to respond to. It just happens when the card comes in.
Yeah, so clones are a great example of that, right?
Yeah, but like Muldrifter is an ETB trigger. Clone is just an ETB ability. There's nothing to respond to.
Yeah, it enters the battlefield as a creature, and then of course it will have whatever enter the battlefield abilities are on it.
So like for lands, Sacred Foundry says when as Sacred Foundry enters the battlefield, you may pay 2 life. That is not a triggered ability, but bounce lands say when Boros Garrison enters the battlefield, return a land you control to its owner's hand.
Right. So that will trigger twice.
Is a triggered ability.
Right. And you don't want that to trigger twice.
Right. Bounce lands are particularly bad with Elesh Norn. And
if she's in the 99, notably.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's Karoo. Karoo's a one-colored bounce land. Yeah. But Elesh Norn also works for your opponent's bounce lands. So if your opponent plays a bounce land when Elesh Norn is on the table, it won't bounce anything.
They no longer have to bounce a hand. Yeah,
exactly.
It is a permanent entering the battlefield, doesn't cause abilities of permanent your opponent's control to trigger.
Yeah. So if you're building Elesh Norn, keep an eye out for the ETB triggers. Look for ases and whens, and be careful with ETB downsides like bounce lands. Lotus Field is a particularly good one to look out for.
Makes you sack 2 lands. In this case, if you play...
You'd sacrifice 4 lands if you played Lotus Field with your own Elesh Norn on the battlefield.
Yeah, so don't do that.
Or something like a Dowsing Dagger, which ETBs and gives your opponents 2 plants. It would give your opponents 4 plants in this case.
Okay.
So be careful with those. All right. All things aside.
Yeah. Easy to build non-bows into Elesh Norn is what we're trying to say here, so just pay attention. But let's talk about her first ability here. It's Panharmonicon, and we're going to double up on enter the battlefield abilities. So that seems pretty powerful. Right?
I mean, when Elesh Norn speaks, we listen. Let's make some stuff into the battlefield.
Yes.
White has a lot of really great ones because White's great at blinking. So, I mean, this is stuff like Stoneforge Mystic is a great ETB.
Getting equipment. Bam. 2 of them.
2 equipment. Sand shall help you put them into play. Stoneforge Mystic.
Yeah. Recruiter of the Guard grabs a creature with toughness 2 or less. You get 2 of those instead. A Ranger Captain of Eos. This just is like a mono white staple, especially in more competitive circles, because you can get a 1-drop that's really impactful. And now you're going to get 2 of them.
Yeah, so you can go search for 2 1-drops. It also has a sack ability, but isn't particularly relevant here, but it's very good.
Yeah.
This also works for, Wall of Omens or Spirited Companion. These creatures that when they enter the battlefield, they draw a card, are just probably good to put in this deck.
Yeah, I really like Rumor Gatherer here.
It's a new card. Great.
Yeah, new card from New Capenna. New. Is it New Capenna?
It was in New Capenna and it was reprinted in I believe this was in a...
That's how good they think this card is.
Yeah, it was in a Baldur's Gate commander deck, I think.
1 white for a 2/1 elf wizard. Whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, scry 1. If this is the second time this ability is resolved this turn, draw a card instead.
So that means every time a creature enters the battlefield, for the first time each turn, it's scry 1 and then draw.
You scry 1, right? And then if it's the second time, right?
The second trigger, I think you draw.
Oh, because this is the second time the ability has resolved.
So if it triggers twice, you cast a creature, you scry 1, you draw.
Wow.
And then the next one you cast, you'll scry twice.
Yep. Right, because you're only going to draw 1 time off it because it's
off of it, per turn.
Yeah, a little confusing, but again, White has now been giving us lots of different ways to get card advantage. It's either just straight up creature enters, draw a card, which is like Elvish Visionary. It used to be a big important card in green. Now White has that.
Yeah, a couple of them.
Pretty good.
Fair warning, there are a lot of this only triggers once per turn cards that have been printed in White specifically. So those... Even if the trigger's doubled, the second one will not happen.
Yeah, and it'll say that right on the text.
Yeah, so Takacia's Welcome is a good example. It says, this ability only triggers once each turn. Elesh Norn does not get around that. It's just the first trigger.
Yeah, so that's a bit of a non-bow.
That being said, there's tons of ways to draw with this. Wedding Ring is another great one that Josh used in
the same episode. Yeah,
was incredibly powerful when you can get hitched to two people.
I should have blown that up. That was my big mistake that game. I think his wedding ring and not ladies.
Yeah, it's pretty good. Wedding Ring. I don't know if you've had it in play yet, but it's very fun.
Yeah, white also has tons of resilience because they have ways to get stuff back from the graveyard. You also have cards like White Plume Adventurer. So this is a card that when it enters the battlefield, you take the initiative. So you're starting on a whole new dungeon track, basically, but you're going to do it twice.
So you go into the first room and then the second room.
Wow.
On that first play. Plus, it untaps stuff.
Yeah, that's always good.
But Sun Titan triggering twice is insane. Karmic Guide triggering twice is insane.
Yeah.
There's also plenty of ramp pieces that you can take advantage of this ETB.
In mono white?
In mono white?
Yeah.
You don't say.
Our Chaosmancer's map will now fetch you up to 4 basic planes cards when it enters the battlefield. And as when the land enters the battlefield and under an opponent's control. So you also just get this great ability where you're able to put those into the battlefield now.
Yeah.
As long as they have more lands than you. But this is a great white catch-up mechanic.
Yeah.
I love catch-up.
One of my favorite ones is Skyclave Relic.
Oh, yeah.
So this is a 3-mana artifact with kicker 3. It has indestructible, and when Skyclave Relic enters the battlefield, if it was kicked, create 2 tapped tokens that are copies of Skyclave Relic. And it also says tap, add 1 mana of any color.
Right,
so
for
if
6
you pay
mana.
6 mana, you make 5 Skyclave Relics.
Yeah.
Which seems pretty good.
But that's still 5 mana for 6 in white.
Seems pretty good. That seems pretty good to me.
Yeah, and then you have a lot of interaction. So this is sort of what you saw in Game Nights really shine through, is the ability for white to just take advantage of this double enter in the battlefield ability and just destroy the board. Mm-hmm. So we have, I've never actually played this card before. It's also a new companion card, but it looks pretty sweet.
I love this card. Yeah, it's Aerial Extortionist. 3 white for a bird soldier with flying. It is a 4/3. And it says whenever it enters the battlefield or deals combat damage to a player, exile up to 1 target non-land permanent. For as long as that card remains exiled, its owners may cast it. Whenever another player casts a spell from anywhere other than their hand, draw a card.
Right.
So if this enters the battlefield twice, you're like, get that out of here, get that out of here.
Now they can still cast it, but you're drawing cards as a result. Maybe you're setting them back just because it was a 7-drop or whatever.
It's a huge tempo hit.
Yeah.
Very annoying. Plus it draws when they like cast their commander or cast a card from impulse draw or cast a foretold card or any number of things.
Yeah, you also have Grasp of Fate, which might be the best card in the deck. It's a 1 white for an enchantment. When Grasp of Fate enters the battlefield, for each opponent, exile up to 1 target non-land permanent that player controls until Grasp of Fate leaves the battlefield. So this is 3 mana, remove not just 3, 6 things.
Ugh, that's so much.
Yeah. And then white has we've gotten Skyclave Apparition, and then you have cards like Fiend Hunter, Banishing Light. So white has had this ability for a while, which is something comes in, it gets rid of something else and tucks it away.
Yeah, there's a ton of great options to make this an insanely controlling deck.
Yeah.
There's a ton of like Oblivion Ring type things. There's a ton of Oblivion Ring type creatures. You can really keep the board clean.
Yeah, just go and watch that Game Nights episode and see how it ended to see how controlling mono white can actually be. Without a single board wipe, by the way, because it could just do it by just doubling up on Skyclave Apparitions.
Yeah, and everything's a one-sided board wipe. Grasp of Fate certainly is.
Yeah, no kidding.
All right, we're talking about enters the battlefield, so let's make them enter the battlefield twice.
Again.
We're going to blank them.
And again, way more than just one time.
Yeah,
so,
for sure.
Mono white has Teleportation Circle. At the beginning of your end step, you exile up to 1 target artifact or creature, specifically. And then Conjurer's Closet. Any deck can play this, and it's 5 mana for a creature to get exiled and returned to the battlefield.
Yeah, one of my favorite Sword of This and That's is Sword of Hearth and Home. It's a blinky sword.
Yay.
It gives equipped creature +2/+2 and has protection from green and from white. And whenever equipped creature deals combat damage to a player, exile up to 1 target creature you control. Then search your library for a basic land card, put both cards onto the battlefield under your control, then shuffle. Equip 2. So you can blink a creature and you can get a land, which in white, this is a great way to ramp and a great way to get a little bit of value. And that's why you really want those cheap, like, Wall of Omens and Spirited Companion cards, because you just have a little value piece to just keep blinking early.
Yep. And these are all very good and very powerful in this deck. And it's like the combos you don't even really need to work at. They just show up because you're blinking something and it does the ability twice.
So those are like the blink tech that we talk about the most.
Yeah.
Like those 3 are permanent based and great, easy to repeat. But with Elesh Norn, some of them are even better than those, and it's permanents that have ETB abilities.
Yeah, so like we talked about with Grasp of Fate, Touch the Spirit Realm is a very similar card, but it's got another channel ability on it that makes this card just so sweet in this deck.
It's awesome.
So 2 in the white enchantment, when it enters the battlefield, exile up to 1 target artifact or creature until it leaves the battlefield. That's just regular. With Elesh Norn out, they'll get rid of 2 things, but it also has the ability to channel it from your hand. So you pay 1 in the white, discard it, and then exile target artifact or creature, and you return it to the battlefield under its owner's control at the beginning of the next end step. So
it's just everything you want it to do.
Yeah, it has the removal side and the bounce side. This is like the perfect synergy card for a deck like this because it takes up the slot of 2 cards, but for 1.
Yeah. Charming Prince is similar. This card is always great in...
Charming Prince.
This card is always great in blink decks because he blinks and he's good to blink. So when he enters the battlefield, you can choose 1, scry 2, or you gain 3 life, or exile another target creature you control, return it to the battlefield under your control at the beginning of the next end step.
Yeah, so you double up a blink with him. Nuts. He can't target himself, obviously, but you can see how this gets out of control, right? Charming Prince comes down. He chooses something like, a Fiend Hunter to exile, or a Skyclave Apparition, and it does it twice. So it gets to do it again.
And those are doubled. So you really have to target different creatures because it doesn't return until the beginning of the next end step.
Yeah.
But
so that one is something else.
So you exile, Skyclave Apparition, and what do we talk about? Like the Aerial Extortionist or a Karmic Guide. And they come back and they trigger twice.
So you go from 2 triggers to 4 triggers, basically. You're just exponentially getting stronger there.
Restoration Angel is very similar. Anything that is a permanent that comes in and blinks something. Felidar Guardian, Flicker Wisp. There's a ton of these.
And then this really dumb card called Preston the Vanisher. We wrote Preston the Vanquisher on the outline.
Oh, did it? Maybe he vanquishes.
3 in the white. Whenever another non-token creature enters the battlefield under your control, if it wasn't cast, blink, create a token that's a copy of that creature. My goodness. You blink the Charming Prince, it comes down, you get another Charming Prince. So you just get to exile 4 things. Oh my gosh.
Okay, so you have Preston on the field, and you just blink, like you just ephemerate a Skyclave Apparition. Then the Skyclave Apparition exits, comes back, hits 2 things. Preston triggers twice, so you make
that's right.
2 white illusions. They trigger twice.
So it's 2 to 6.
So now you exile 6 things. Yuck. It's a very powerful effect.
Yeah, I quit.
I think it's pretty easy to see that this is an extremely powerful white blink commander. It's a very controlling mono white commander generally. Yeah. So I wanted to see if there was something that you could do that was a little bit cuter with it.
Cute.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like a bunny with blood dribbling down its mouth. Very cute.
So I was thinking about, what do we make this a mono white landfall deck?
Oh, okay. Cool. There's a lot of good landfall stuff in white.
There's a lot of great landfall stuff in white, and landfall triggers twice. So we've got Felidar Retreat, which is a classic. Whenever a land enters, you either make a cat or you put a +1 counter on all of your creatures and give them vigilance. Emeria Shepherd is one of my favorite cards with landfall. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, you may either return something from your graveyard to your hand, or if it's plains, you may return it to the battlefield. Seems good to double up.
Wow.
Emeria Angel makes birds with landfall.
Trove Warden, you get to exile 2 things, and then you get to put those back on the battlefield, right?
Yeah, Trove Warden helps you put lands into play. So it's like whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, exile target permanent card with a converted mana cost 3 or less from your graveyard.
Okay,
so that could be a land.
Yep.
And then whenever it dies, put each permanent exiled with it onto the battlefield under your control. So you can either exile stuff from your graveyard or other people's graveyard, and then they'll come back later.
Yeah. Sun Titan is going to bring back lands. We've seen this all the time because it counts anything with mana value 3 or less.
Yeah, there's a lot of, white has a lot of ways to put lands into play.
Extra lands, especially.
Extra lands into play, especially from the graveyard. Yeah, like Sivin's Reclamation does this. Restoration of Iganjo does this. Archaeomancer's Map, which we mentioned before. Sword of Hearthenhome's another great one that we talked about before.
Another one, yeah.
Staff of Titania is like a weird colorless card that makes lands enter the battlefield.
Yeah, so we'll read this one again. It's a 2-mana equipment, equip 3. Equip creature gets +X/+X, where X is the number of forests you control. And then whenever equip creature attacks, you create a 1/1 green forest dryad land creature token. So it's a token that's a 1/1, but it also can tap for lands. It is affected by Summoning Sickness, but this is kind of like having a tap land come in.
Yeah, it just ramps you it makes you a little mana dork every time.
Yep. Deep Known Terramancer as well. Great card from Baldur's Gate. Walking Atlas, another way to just pump lands on the battlefield, get those double landfall triggers.
And then white, of course, has all of the catch-up ramp that we're used to, which doesn't seem super good in a landfall deck.
Yeah, because you're definitely going to be in front of other people.
Right.
Unless you're playing like Zurin Orb or something, and you're
Right.
actively sacking lands in your graveyard and then getting them back.
Yeah, if the plan is to like, okay, I'm going to sack all my lands and I'm going to cast my catch-up, my Knight of the White Orchids or Loyal Warhound or that kind of thing. And then you're like, okay, I'll cast Brought Back or something like that. Brought Back doesn't quite work there. Cosmic Intervention is a great one. Planar Birth is a really weird card that says put all basic land cards from all graveyards into play under their owner's control tapped.
Whoa.
So if you sack all your basic lands, you can bring them all back.
Yeah, and then get 80 Felidar retreat triggers. That's pretty
I don't know.
cool.
Maybe there's enough. Maybe there's enough to do mono white landfall.
Yeah, but with this commander, kind of tough because one mistake we made in game nights is not instantly removing it the time it came in and keep removing it over and over again because it does just sort of spiral out of control.
Yeah, that's the thing is like you can't really do cute things with broken commanders. Like if you have
it's like playing Tulane and expecting yourself to be
and
doing
being like, yeah, but I'm playing like boopity boop themed deck.
I have 20 cards, boopity boop.
There's Brushwag Tribal, and you're like, I don't trust you.
Yeah. So this does lead us to our next mini discussion point here, which is Elesh Norn ban worthy? So Sheldon Menery, godfather of the format, did write an article about this card. And it was called Elesh Norn, Mother of Machines, the Good and the Bad on Star City Games. And in it, he's basically suggesting, like, look, let's look closely at the play patterns that Elesh Norn creates, and then whether or not that qualifies it to be a future candidate for a ban.
Yeah, Sheldon said this, I'm firmly in the camp that the card is a net negative for the format, but that's not the only part of the calculus. What remains to be seen and observed over the next quarter or two is if it's negative enough to take action on. Yeah,
and this card does not look like it's going to offer positive play experiences. It's dangerously designed and then pushed mana-wise. Now, I do agree with that. Original Elesh Norn, 7 mana, really powerful effect.
Yeah.
-2/-2 to every creature, +2/+2 your own. This is 5 mana.
Yeah.
Keep in mind that Panharmonicon is 4 mana and doesn't have that second ability, and it's also not a 4/7 vigilance. It's hard to remove, right? That toughness is pretty high up there. Now, sure, you can just say just play removal or whatever, but Elesh Norn plus 1 card can sometimes feel like, wow, I'm out of the game completely.
Yeah, I mean, like there's a lot of people who build around certain types where it's like my creature deck, my Sidisi Brood Tyrant deck is all about creatures. Everything's on a creature. So most of my removal is stapled to a creature ETB. So if there's an Torpor Orb on the board, or if there's an Elesh Norn on the board, my removal isn't an answer for Elesh Norn.
That's right. Torpor Orb is a good comparison for Elesh Norn's second ability, and you don't see that card played very often.
Yeah, people don't love to play against it.
You'd be surprised, yeah. What do you think? Is she too much for Commander? I think Panharmonicon.
I agree that this walks and talks a lot like other banned cards. This card reminds me of Hullbreacher because it's really fun. It has this really fun ability where it's like Hullbreacher, it has like whenever my opponent draws a card, I make a treasure.
Sick.
That's amazing. It's Smothering Tithe in blue with flash. That's so fun. And then it also has this brutal clause that says, actually, they don't draw the cards also.
Yeah, sorry. You just get the thing.
And that fun part, that really powerful part, makes people want to play it despite that really brutal part.
Yeah.
And I wonder if that's how this is going to play out. If people are going to read it as like Elesh Norn's a mean card and it's not appropriate for our play group, or if they're going to read it as it's another Panharmonicon and I want it in my blink deck.
Yeah, I was going to say actually, because like if Elesh Norn was 8 mana, it's a bit of a different question.
Yeah, for sure.
Now there is an 8 mana mono white card that was banned that just allows you to not play any cards of the chosen color.
Iona.
And the idea behind that is, right, positive play experiences. Because if you sit down with your sweet mono red deck and someone drops an Iona or reanimates it on you and says red, you're not playing Commander, you're not having fun.
Yeah, you're not dead, but you're definitely not playing.
And it's also about prevalence. And that's the thing that it boils down to for me, which is this is how we have seen Wizards design the Commander value for mono white now. If you look, we talked about a lot of cards that have been printed recently. Keeper of the Accord, Deep Known Terramancer, Archaeomancer's Map, Savin's Reclamation, Trove Warden, Felidar Retreat. These are all cards within the past couple of years. So I wonder, right, if this is mono white's thing, enter the battlefield abilities, it's not direct card draw, you have to have something happen to have it happen. Does Elesh Norn is that always at the end of the road for any mono white deck to be like, hey, you're building mono white. If you're going to go down this road, no matter what, you open that door, it's going to be Elesh Norn waiting for you to have you put her in her deck.
Right. I mean, that's the question. Is she going to get played at the wrong tables? And that's what leads to a card getting banned.
Yeah, if it comes at the cost of the play group or the experience.
Right. So
I have a pretty iron will, and getting everything deleted from my board by Josh in that game nights got me pretty close to upset. I'm normally very cool-headed these days, but that I was like, this is just unbelievable.
It's a real shame. I mean, we talked about Preston together, and these are both mono white blink commanders that are exciting and are fun to play and are powerful, but they're just too broken for casual players to build. So it's
it just gets there.
Yeah,
it just does
it's sort of a bummer because I like playing mono white and I really like playing blink decks, and I would like to be able to make Preston or Elesh Norn the commander of one of those decks because they're very exciting to me. But the attaching this power level or this second torpor orb effect just takes it sort of one step further, where I need to be at a table where the players are comfortable with that.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Because a lot of players are not going to be I am not interested in infinite combos, or I am not interested in a restricting effect like torpor orb.
Yeah, I'm here for battle cruiser. It's like you're bringing a knife to a gunfight.
Yeah, it just means it's not appropriate for more tables,
right?
Which makes the decks less fun if you don't get to play them as much.
Okay, well, it's a really interesting question. Chat and commenters, let us know. Do you think Elesh Norn is ban worthy? If not, why? If so, why?
Also, I want to hear if you're going to put her in a deck. Are you putting Elesh Norn in one of your decks or not?
Yeah. All right, let's go down the other side of the mono white chain here.
Yeah, we got another mono white commander.
Not as powerful, but actually I think more interesting personally. This is Skrelv, Defector Might. It's a 1 white mana for a 1/1 legendary artifact creature, Phyrexian Might, with Toxic 1. So if you get dealt combat damage by this creature, they also get a poison counter. And Skrelv can't block. And it has, for a Phyrexian mana, so you either pay 1 white or 2 life, tap, choose a color. Another target creature you control gains Toxic 1 and Hexproof from that color until end of turn. It can't be blocked by creatures of that color this turn.
Pretty sweet.
Yeah, so a lot of text there, but basically this is a little 1/1 with Toxic 1, but it can also, for 1 mana or 2 life, tap and give another creature Toxic 1, and then they get Hexproof from that color that you choose, and it can't be blocked by creatures of that color. So it's pseudo-unblockable.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty sweet. Unblockable by those colors. Quick note on the difference between toxic and poisonous and infect. Infect is equal to the power of the creature that dealt the damage and can be a non-combat damage.
Yeah, it just says infect, doesn't have a number after it.
Yeah, whatever the power is, however much damage they deal in whatever way, you get that many poison counters. Poisonous is whenever they deal damage, you get that many counters. It is a trigger. It's whenever they deal damage, you get those counters. So it can be responded to.
Yeah, you can... counter that activated.
Yeah, you could stifle it or something.
Right.
Toxic is closer to lifelink. It happens when the damage is dealt.
Okay.
You cannot respond to it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Also get a poison counter. Oh.
Yes.
Love that. 3 versions of Infect. You may never see it once in your life. Okay, so back into mono white here.
Yeah.
Skrelv has the ability to protect other creatures on your board, which is kind of cool.
So it has this Mother of Runes effect that we've seen kind of before, where it's an instant speed protection piece.
Mother of Mites.
Mother of Mites, a little baby. I think there's one version of this deck that just looks like you're playing powerful creatures and you use Skrelv to protect them.
Oh, and you can cast it early and just have that activated early open.
And it's kind of like a good stuff mono white deck. I could absolutely see that being the build where you're I just run my Esper Sentinels. Maybe you run some little hate bears that you want to protect on your board, a Hushbringer, which is a Torpor Orb type effect, or an Aven Mind Sensor.
Or you play Elesh Norn.
Yeah, or a Drannith Magistrate, and you just...
Another card with people
super fun card, Drannith Magistrate. I can see Skrelv being at the helm of that kind of deck.
Right, okay.
And using something like a God Eternal, Oketra. That's whenever you cast a little creature, you make a 4/4 zombie.
Yeah.
I could see that being a deck. I don't think it's the most interesting build of Skrelv, but I like just using mono white good stuff and using Skrelv to protect those powerful creatures that white is very good at having.
I feel like this deck also just gets you to Elesh Norn if you build this direction into the good stuff area.
For sure. Yeah, so I could see that being the build. But I think there's a more interesting build with Skrelv, and that's playing an aggressive version, really leaning into the unblockableness and the toxicness of it.
Yeah. If you play Skrelv on turn 1, there's a good chance you're going to hit with it 2, maybe even 3 times before someone's able to start blocking it. And then you just switch to something else, and then you make it unblockable with Skrelv's ability.
Yeah.
So you've got Plague Mirror. It's an infect creature. Ichor Claw Mirror. Core Prowler. These are all OG classic infect cards. Yeah. Inkmoth Nexus seems really great in this deck. And then Tine Shrike, just a flying infect creature. So there's lots of different ways to get infect poison counters on people, for sure.
Yeah. There's also a lot of new white cards that make mites. So you could try and really lean into the mite direction with like a Skrelv's Hive, which is a new card.
1 in the white for an enchantment. At the beginning of your upkeep, you lose a life, and you create a 1/1 colorless Phyrexia Mite artifact creature token with Toxic 1, and this creature can't block. And second ability, as long as an opponent has 3 or more poison counters, creatures you control with Toxic also have lifelink.
Pretty good.
Yeah.
And it makes those, it makes me a little mite every turn. This one is a new card as well and is great, I think. It's White Sun's Twilight.
Ooh.
X white for a sorcery. You gain X life. Create X 1/1 colorless for Phyrexian Mite artifact creature tokens with Toxic 1, and this creature can't block. If X is 5 or more, destroy all other creatures.
Wow. Imagine if you cast this for 5, you get 5 1/1s with Toxic 1.
Yes, 7 mana,
and you
wipe the board, and you get 5 toxic bodies.
Yeah, swing. You're probably gonna kill someone.
That's pretty sweet. That's a pretty short clock, and people have to get blockers down quickly.
Yeah, I like that. Actually, I don't like that. That's really scary. Now, if you're not going the infect route, you could just go the aggressive, unblockable route, right?
Well, like your might gives them Toxic 1, so you could just play evasive creatures, that are powerful in other ways.
Yeah, Remorseful Cleric, great way to have some graveyard hate on a flying body as well. Soltari Visionary, haven't seen this card played in a while.
Yeah, he's a little mashed potato boy.
Yeah, it's 1 white shadow. It can block your Dauthi Voidwalker. It says if Soltari Visionary damages a player or deals combat damage to a player, destroy an enchantment that player controls.
And if you give it Toxic, they'll take a little Toxic too.
Yeah, I think one thing to note is that Toxic is much worse than Infect, because you could give Infect to a 5/5 and it deals 5 poison, but if you give Toxic 1 to a 5/5, it deals 5 damage and gives them 1 poison counter. So
right.
Keep that in mind.
That's why I started leaning into some creatures with double strike.
Oh, okay.
So now if you give creatures with double strike Toxic, that it'll trigger twice. So one in the set is Jawbone Duelist, already has Toxic, but I believe it stacks. I think if you give it Toxic 1 twice.
Oh, then it's going to have the keyword Toxic 1, Toxic 1.
Toxic 1.
Right. So there'll be 2 separate instances of Toxic triggering when they deal combat damage. So yeah, I think that does work.
I believe so.
Yeah, that totally works. It's the same with like training and stuff too. I think you can give them multiple instances of it.
I think so.
Yeah.
So Jawbone Duelist is a 1 white for a double strike with Toxic 1. That's in All Will Be 1 and is a great thing to give unblockable to.
Yeah, and then you got like Sky Hunter Skirmisher, which was a beating in limited if you had the right stuff on it, but it's just a 1/1 flying double striker. Same with Aven Sunstriker, and you can Megamorph it.
Yeah.
Free, the Megamorph, it comes in even bigger, but that you're not worrying so much about.
More about the double strike. Then you get 2 toxic counters on if they hit.
I feel like you've mentioned this card a bunch of times now.
It's really good with mites. It's Goring Ceratops. It's 5 white for a dinosaur with double strike. When it attacks other creatures you control, gain double strike. If you can give it unblockable with your mite and Toxic, then you're dealing 2 with it, and your whole board, which probably has Toxic or Infect creatures on it, also has double strike.
That's a good point, because there is a background that gives just your commander double strike, but I feel like if you're going the go wide route with Toxic, because that's how I think you really kill someone, is you have a true conviction to give all your creatures double strike and lifelink instead. So because you're going wide, you want to swing with a bunch of mites, especially with your White Sun's Twilight. Not
Zenith anymore.
Not Zenith anymore.
Yeah. And then if you're going the Infect or the Toxic route, it is really hard to get people to 10 fully through combat. So you're going to need some proliferate stuff as well. Luckily, there's some cool stuff.
Yeah, a new one, Norn's Choir Master, 3 white for a 5/4 Phyrexian Angel. Flying for a strike. Whenever a commander you control attacks, enters the battlefield, or attacks, proliferate.
Pretty good.
Yeah, so I mean, your commander costs 3 the next time it comes out. I could totally see also if you have a sack outlet, like a Nationalized Altar, you're sacking it, you're paying 1 mana the first time extra, sacking it, paying 2 mana, and then you're just proliferating over and over again. That could totally be a end state win con with like 7 mana on the board.
I could also see a version where you put like a Whisper Silk Cloak on your commander as well to give it unblockable and Shroud, and then you can just start attacking with it.
Yeah.
Sword of Truth and Justice is a great way to proliferate in white. This is when it deals combat damage to a player, put a +1 counter on each creature you control, then on a creature you control, excuse me, then proliferate.
If it was printed yesterday, it would say each.
You're right. But this was years ago in Modern Horizons.
Oh my gosh, no, it isn't that long ago even. Grateful Apparition. This is the best white creature proliferator. When it deals combat damage to a player or planeswalker, you proliferate.
Yep. So this, if you give Grateful Apparition Toxic, it'll hit, give a counter, and then proliferate.
Right. And then brand new card, Staff of Completion. 3 mana. It's like Staff of Domination, but for completing. 3 mana artifact. You can tap it to do 4 different things. The first is tap, pay 1 life, destroy target permanent you own.
Sack a thing, basically.
Outlet, yeah. Tap, pay 2 life, add 1 mana of any color. Tap, pay 3 life, proliferate. Very good. Tap, pay 4 life, draw a card. That's better than paying 4 mana, by the way.
Yeah.
Especially in mono white. I could see myself paying that rate. And then 5 mana, like Staff of Domination, untap Staff of Completion.
They got the Staff of Domination, too.
Yeah.
They're completing everybody.
Yeah. So I think if you're going to build the aggressive route, you're going to need some infect creatures because you're gonna want to have better ways to get poison counters on people.
For sure.
And then proliferate seems really important.
Ways to buff them up, make sure that they punch through on the other side. And do not forget that proliferate stuff. It's very important.
I think we're going to see Scrub more in the 99. I
agree.
Really good in a Yoshimaru deck.
It's,
right?
Yoshimaru giving him unblockable. Counter,
and then you can just occasionally give him Toxic 1. But the hexproof and unblockable is really huge. Yeah.
It's, I agree. I think we'll see a lot of Skrelv, actually. It's sort of like...
Maybe I'll make a Yoshimaru infect deck, so it's like a poison bite from a dog.
Poor Yoshi, he's completed too.
Yeah.
Oh no.
It just makes everyone a little cooler. You know, it's like it's like the kid in high school when he wears sunglasses for the first time. Everyone's like, "Oh, who is that?
Are you cool?"
Yeah, it's like the opposite of the mask effect where you can only see people's eyes, so everyone gets more mysterious all of a sudden. Yeah. Okay.
This X card's sweet. I really like him.
And the name.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, you say the name first, and then I'll say the name.
Unctus, Grand Meditect.
Yeah, I'm going to go for Unctus. But it's probably Unctus. Okay, so it's 1 blue, legendary artifact creature, Phyrexian Vidalcan. It's a 2/4. Other blue creatures you control have, whenever this creature becomes tapped, draw a card, then discard a card.
Pretty good.
It's other blue creatures only. And then it says other artifact creatures you control get +1/+1. Looking a little bit like a Grand Architect now. And then for a Phyrexian blue mana, so either 2 life or 1 blue mana, until end of turn, target creature you control becomes a blue artifact in addition to its other colors and types, and activate only as a sorcery. But it doesn't require Unctus to tap. So you can make your entire board artifacts, and then if you have ways to tap those creatures as artifacts as well, then you're going to be able to draw a discard.
Pretty good.
Yeah, it seems like a really versatile, interesting card here.
Yeah, it surprised me, honestly, with how much it can do. I want to get this out of the way because it's important to say, but I don't think this is the cool way to build this. It does go infinite with a Pheto Alchemist.
Yep, you can tap that to untap an artifact or a creature.
Which means you tap a Pheto Alchemist, you loot with Unctus, and then you use the ability of a Pheto Alchemist to untap it. Yeah. So you can tap it infinitely, draw your whole deck.
Yeah, you can untap itself, notably. It's not another target. Vizier of Tumbling Sands is untap another target permanent. That's not itself.
It also goes infinite with 2 untappers. So if you have Vizier of Tumbling Sands and like a Kelpie Guide, then the Kelpie Guide untaps the Vizier, and the Vizier untaps the Kelpie, and then you draw and discard your whole deck, and you've done it.
Yep, Fate Fixture as well. Very good, yeah. Yeah,
you win with a Thassa's Oracle, Laboratory Maniac. Ta-da! You did it. Good job.
Yeah. Okay, so let's talk about another way to build this. Yeah. And this is, again, like a lot like Grand Architect, a card that we very much used to be a lot more popular back in the day. Very powerful card, but it's all about artifacts.
So there's definitely a lot of things on the card are hinting at this artifact build.
Yeah.
Is using like using artifact tech to draw and discard and using the graveyard stuff that you would get for artifacts. So like Emery Lurker of the Lock is a perfect card for this.
Yeah. So this costs 1 less for each artifact you control. It's 2 in the blue otherwise. Enters the battlefield, you mill 4, but then you can tap it to choose target artifact in your graveyard and you can cast that card this turn. So when you tap Emery, not only are you choosing a card, you're also drawing and discarding thanks to ULTRAPRO. So you can stack it so you draw this card first, and if that's a card that you somehow want, then Emery can target it.
Actually, I guess when you activate it, you have to target.
Oh, you're right.
When you activate it, you have to target. So you cannot target the thing you've looted, but you still loot to get stuff in your graveyard for Emery next turn.
That is the second time I've been wrong this episode.
That's
maybe more. I just don't know. You know?
Keep a tally. Let us know.
Do not keep a tally. Do not let me know.
I mean, you can... Don't tell Jimmy. Urza Powerstone Prodigy is a sweet card and incredibly good in this deck. 2 and a blue for a legendary creature, Human Artificer with Vigilance. It is a 1/3 that says 1, tap, draw a card, then discard a card. So you draw and discard a card, then draw and discard a card.
Thanks to ULTRAPRO.
And then it says whenever you discard 1 or more artifact cards, create a tapped Power Stone token. This ability triggers only once per turn.
Okay.
So every time you draw and discard, regardless of whether that's with Urza, you make a Power Stone. If you've discarded an artifact, which seems pretty good.
Yeah, very good. Master Transmuter, you can pay a blue and tap it to return an artifact you control to its owner's hand, and then you get to cheat an artifact out from your hand on the battlefield. Yikes.
Pretty good. So there's a lot of selection to find those big artifacts that you want to cheat into play.
Portal to Phyrexia.
Vidalcan Engineer or Renowned Weaponsmith both do the same thing. They tap for 2 mana of any one color or colorless. It can only be spent on artifacts or activating abilities of artifacts. So if you're building an artifact deck, these are looters plus mana dorks. It seems quite strong.
Yep, and then you have a card like Grand Architect, which
the man himself, the inspiration.
The inspiration. They look kind of similar too. So 1 blue, other blue creatures you control get +1/+1, and you can pay a blue, target artifact creature becomes blue until end turn. But big one, tap an untapped blue creature you control, and you do the same thing as Renowned Weaponsmith. You add colorless, only can use it to cast artifact spells or activate abilities of artifacts.
Yeah. So Grand Architect doesn't tap himself; he taps other.
Yeah.
No, and it taps him too. You could tap any number of blue creatures you control, and then you would draw and discard while still making that mana, which seems pretty insane.
Now, the cool combo, obviously, is you use ULTRAPRO's third ability to turn a card like Urza Powerstone Prodigy into an artifact, and then Grand Architect can tap another blue creature to then pay for, like Urza's ability to pay 1, and then draw a card, discard, tap. So you can use that mana there by turning other things into artifacts that have activated abilities.
I mean, there's a ton, like Urza, the other Urza Lord High Artificer is great in this deck as well if you're going to have a high density of artifact creatures.
Yeah.
Notably, it only works if you tap a blue artifact creature or if you turn something into an artifact.
Yeah.
So you do have to use ULTRAPRO's other ability to make Urza work, but it still taps stuff. It's very good.
And again, you're probably going to be doing that because Urza is just nuts.
Yeah.
Springleaf Drum is a way to tap an untapped creature you control to add mana, and just bonus on top, you now get to draw a discard.
Yeah, and then there's a ton of ways to tap artifacts to add to your casting cost.
Oh, right.
So Chief Engineer says artifact spells you cast have Convoke. So you can tap creatures to...
Tap for 1 mana.
Tap for mana, and then each one draws and discards.
Wow.
Which seems crazy.
War of Invention, Improvise. Your artifacts can help cast it. Each artifact you tap after they're done activating mana abilities pays for 1. So your artifact creatures now draw discard if they're blue, right?
Yeah, they have to be blue to do it. So, but there's a lot of I looked into it, and there actually is a ton of relevant blue artifacts that are also.
Well, you can also just use ULTRAPRO's ability to turn it into
them into artifacts.
Yeah, blue artifact specifically.
Yeah. So there's a ton of improvised cards. Universal Surveillance is a great one. It's blue, X, draw X cards, improvise.
Oh, wow. And you add some draw discard on top of that.
Yeah, it's a ton of selection.
Yeah. Inspiring Statuary just gives all non-artifact spells you have with improvise.
Yeah.
So that seems just kind of nuts, to be honest.
There's a good win con for this one, I think, is Mirrodin Besiege, because you're drawing and discarding so many cards. It feels like getting to 15 artifacts in your graveyard is doable.
Just make people win the game.
All right.
This is mono blue, and mono blue decks typically do not tend to also be on the fun to play against side of the spectrum because it could just be very controlling, as we've seen.
You could definitely lean into a control build here. There's a couple of cards that tap to do stuff. Sly Investigator is blue and tap until your next turn. Target creature an opponent controls can't be blocked, and goad that creature.
Nice.
You're goading and getting some selection. Dulcet Sirens does a similar thing.
Hydar, Rhymewind Master. Haven't seen this one in a while. Yeah, 2 mana tap, return target permanent to its owner's hand, and you can only play this if you control 4 or more snow permanents. So you just obviously just build the snow version of the lands in this deck, and if you're going to put Hydar in there.
Still seems good. And then there's lots of ways to tap creatures in here. Opposition is a terrifying way to tap things down.
Oof.
Yeah, you tap an untapped creature you control to tap target artifact, creature, or land.
Yeah, on someone's upkeep, you just tap their entire board down.
Pretty good.
It happens.
It's gross. Relic of Legends is another cool one.
Yeah, this is a newer card as well. This card, I think, is going to become a staple. It's 3 mana for an artifact. You can tap it for 1 mana of any color, but you can also tap an untapped legendary you control to add 1 mana of any color. So if you have an all legendaries deck, all of your legendaries can now tap. In this case, in the ULTRAPRO deck, your blue legendaries can tap to give you mana. Disgusting.
Good win con for this version of the deck is the new Teferi, Temporal Pilgrim. It has a static ability that says whenever you draw a card, put a loyalty counter on Teferi. And then it has a crazy ultimate, which is a -12. It says target player chooses a permanent they control and returns it to its owner's hand. Then they shuffle each non-land permanent they control into their library.
Whoa.
Into their library, they put it.
Yeah, that's yikes.
Terrible. But you're going to be drawing a ton of cards with ULTRAPRO. So I think it's worth it in this deck.
Yep, I believe so too.
There's also a version of this deck that is mill, which I think is kind of fun.
Yeah, because of persistent petitioners, right?
Yeah.
So 1 in the blue, 1 mana tap, target player puts the top card of their library into their graveyard, and then you can tap 4 untapped advisors to make a target player put the top 12 cards, or mill 12 cards, and you can have any number of persistent petitioners in your deck. They are also advisors.
Yeah, so they're blue creatures that want to tap. They draw and discard. Plus,
and they have a secondary tap ability, too, to tap other ones. Yeah.
Plus, there's like a ton of cards that say whenever you draw, opponents mill. So Psychic Corrosion does this. Mystic Redaction says whenever you discard a card, each opponent mills too.
Oh, wow.
Sphinx's Tutelage, Teferi's Tutelage. Like there's a ton of versions of this blue enchantment that will turn all of the card draw from ULTRAPRO into more mill.
Yeah, and if you're in this deck, you really want to play Teferi's Ageless Insight or Alhamret's Archive because that's going to double up your draws. And so very good in this mill build, but also just these 2 cards probably go in every other version of this deck.
Yeah, it means it turns card selection into card advantage in this deck. It's nuts.
So it's kind of like a hidden Bruvac, the Grandiloquent command.
Yeah.
Because if you play Bruvac, everyone knows what's coming.
Exactly what's going on. But ULTRAPRO is kind of sneaky.
ULTRAPRO.
Defiler of Dreams seems real good if you're playing Persistent Petitioners because that means all of your Persistent Petitioners could be cast for paying 2 life. No, they're 2. Excuse me. For 1 generic mana, you can do that.
Yeah.
And then whenever you cast a blue permanent spell, draw a card. So all of your Persistent Petitioners cantrip. That seems pretty sweet.
Yeah, and typically, I remember you guys talked about this, you and Josh, about how the blue one was not so great because you're not playing permanent-based decks usually in blue, but this is a permanent-based deck. So
mill is very permanent-based. So Defiler of Vigor is probably good in a lot of these.
Yep, and then you just have all your regular mill tech, Maddening Cacophony, Fractured Sanity, Memory Erosion, and these are always, you just get all them cards out of there. And then like this new version,
this goofy version.
Just flying men or things. Things that fly because when they attack, they tap.
That's fun.
Yeah, that's fun, she says, as everyone looks at her ULTRAPRO deck and goes, all right, you're just going to combo off and kill us? And you're like, no, it's about flyers.
Fairy Seer.
Yeah, it's pretty good. Scry 2 when there's the battlefield. That way, when it attacks, you'll know whether or not you want the card at the top.
There's a lot of like cheap little flyers that do extra stuff. Thieving Skydiver is really good with Kicker, and you can steal an artifact of Kicker cost. And then there's a lot of like blue combat damagey stuff that you could play into. So Grazilax, Illithid Scholar is a really good payoff for flying men.
Yeah.
It's whenever 1 or more creatures you control deal combat damage to a player, draw a card.
Yep. Heraldic Banner gives all of those creatures +1/+0, a little boof,
Candlekeep Inspiration, I think, is going to be your big one con if you're playing blue, mono blue aggro. Either that, it's 4 and a blue for a sorcery that says, until end of turn, creatures you control have base power and toughness XX, where X is the number of cards you own in exile and in your graveyard that are instance cards, sorcery cards, and or have adventure. So
not many adventure cards, unless.
But if you're drawing and discarding all of this, you can really fill your graveyard up with what you want there.
then you just smack in for a big alpha strike.
Seems cool.
And then one last shout out to Josh Lee Kwai. Couldn't be here today because it's us and not him. That's it. That's the only reason. Is the Tim deck. Tim deck, Prodigal Sorcerer, taps to deal damage and ping stuff around. So I could totally see ULTRAPRO having something maybe into like a Gearson Starn deck.
Yeah,
that
definitely.
It's whenever another source deals exactly 1 damage to a permanent, Gearson does 2 damage to that permanent player. So maybe you do Gearson, a little Tago action, some Prodigal Sorcerer, other pingers.
All those little pingers. Ooh, that's pretty sweet.
Nin the Pain Artist does
a similar thing. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Good job.
is sweet.
Yeah, ULTRAPRO has a lot of potential. Again, very powerful, just easy to build into an instant win type commander as well.
Make sure that if you're playing ULTRAPRO and you're not running the infinite combos that you mention that, because I would expect it if you don't mention it. The next commander is black. We're moving on to the black ones. It's Geth, Thane of Contracts.
Like a good lawyer.
Geth's a lawyer. Yeah, he's been to school. 1 black for a legendary Phyrexian zombie. He's a 3/4. It says other creatures you control get -1/-1. Pretty good.
Pretty cool.
1 black, tap, return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. It gains if this creature would leave the battlefield, exile it instead of putting it anywhere else. Activate only as a sorcery.
Okay, so this is a nice reanimator here. 1 black, tap it. However, the creatures you bring back will instantly get -1/-1 from his other static ability. And if they're an X1, they die.
Yeah.
And if they die, they get exiled.
Yes. Well, if they die and he brought them back.
Right, yeah.
They get exiled.
Right,
But
if you just play them with him out, they also just die, but then they'll go to your graveyard like normal. To then get brought back in exile.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay. So yeah, you cannot play your Blood Artists, your Zulaport Cutthroats, your Viscera Seers in this deck because they're all X1s.
Notably, don't play. There's a ton of the Edict cards, like Fleshblack Marauder, that their toughness is only 1. That's a really bad card in this deck. Because you will play it, it will die, and you will have to sacrifice something else.
Yeah. So how do we build around this? Seems like a drawback here.
Geth needs a little bit of help, I think, to be as powerful as he could be. So I think we definitely want to give him haste. We definitely want to untap him. Of course, 1,000-Year Elixir goes into all decks if your commander has a tap ability. Patriarch's Seal, I think, also goes in a lot of these decks.
Right.
It's a 3-mana artifact that taps for 1 mana of any color, and it says 1 in tap to untap target legendary creature you control.
Yeah, your commander in this case.
Seems good.
Yeah, Rings of Bright Hearth, you can double up on the ability by paying 2, so it's 5 mana to basically get 2 creatures out of your graveyard, and then Conjurer's Closet because you can now exile that card, put it back, and it no longer has Geth's, sort of like if this dies, exile instead on it, right?
That's your way to jump around his exile clause.
Okay, what about the -1/-1 ability? Is there something cool we can do with that static ability?
It feels like there should be. I looked, and there's not a ton of creatures that you want to die that are at 1 toughness. The biggest one I found is Stitcher's Supplier.
Right.
It's a 1 mana card. When it enters or dies, put the top 3 cards of your library into your graveyard.
Yeah, so this is 1 mana mill 6.
1 mana mill 6 is really strong. And if you reanimated him with Geth, you mill 3 more. You won't get the dies trigger because it's exiled instead. So you could mill up to 9, which is actually a huge amount of mill for just 1 mana. Well, 4 mana total, I guess.
Play it, dies, reanimate it, and then when it dies next time, it gets exiled instead.
Yeah.
Yeah, Golgari Thug is a dredge card that also, when it dies, you put a creature card from your graveyard on top of your library. So that's just a way to play it instantly, bring something back, and draw that next turn or whenever.
Yeah, sometimes it's hard to get Golgari Thug back in your graveyard, and being able to just play it from your hand and get the dice trigger is really strong, I think.
Yeah, I think the only other deck that really stood out to me is there's a Shirei Shizo's Caretaker build where it says whenever a creature with power 1 or less is put into your graveyard from the battlefield, you may return that card to the battlefield at the beginning of the next end step if Shirei is still on the battlefield. And that deck plays Heartless Summoning, which also gives creatures you control -1/-1.
That's cool.
So that way you can play a card that's a 1/1, it instantly dies and instantly get that Shirei trigger, and then that sort of affects other things. So yeah, I know that Shirei decks play Heartless Summoning, so that might be a way to think about Geth, maybe even as a piece in the Shirei deck.
Yeah. So here's the main thing is what are we reanimating? We're building a reanimator deck.
Yeah.
This is the most exciting part. And there's so many cool options, and I think it's a very personal choice, honestly.
Yeah, Mono Black has so many scary creatures, and you just kind of choose what direction you want to go in, right?
Yeah, I mean, you could go as powerful as something like Razaketh, or you could go with something a little bit sillier, like a Thieving Amalgam is 5 black
Oh,
for
yeah, you played this the other day.
I played it the other day. It's sweet. At the beginning of each opponent's upkeep, you manifest the top card of that player's library, and whenever a creature you control but don't own dies, its owner loses 2 life, and you gain 2 life.
Yeah, so every instant you get a new 2/2. It could be a sweet creature or just a cool card from their deck that they wanted, but now you have.
Yeah. But there's, of course, the classics. Massacre Worm still kills people.
Still out of the blue. Yeah.
All the time.
Ancient
killed me the other day.
Really?
Yeah.
You had too many creatures out. That's
I did.
Why.
Yeah.
Ancient Brass Dragon is the 7-mana Elder Dragon from the last Baldur's Gate set. This is not the most strong of all of them, but still pretty good. When it deals combat damage, you roll a d20, and then you put any number of target creature cards with total mana value X or less from graveyards, anyone's graveyard, on the battlefield under your control, where X is the result.
Yeah. I mean, it's a way to reanimate other than your commander, which I think is probably good.
Yeah.
There's huge sweet stuff like Villas, Broker of Blood.
Oh yeah, Razorcast.
An 8/8 flying. It has black, pay 2 life. Target creature gets -1/-1 until end of turn, and whenever you lose life, draw that many cards. Whew, that seems fine.
Yeah, seems more than fine. Seems very powerful.
This one I like a lot is Lorcan Warlock Collector. It's a new one. It's 5 black for a devil. It says whenever a creature card is put into an opponent's graveyard from anywhere, you may pay life equal to its mana value. If you do, put it onto the battlefield under your control. It's a warlock in addition to its other types. If a warlock you control would die, exile it instead.
Ooh, cool.
So, yeah, it's like a sort of a worse Turgid.
Yeah, it gets your stuff back. Yeah. And now that you're throwing these things into the graveyard, Geth always loves to reanimate them in different ways. You could probably play the original Geth, but you could also just play Reanimate, Animate Dead, Necromancy, Stitch Together, Living Death, right? You're turbo milling and you're wanting to go nuts. Cool stuff back.
I don't think Geth's the only reanimation spell in here. You really want to have like multiple big things on board at the same time. All right, so we got to get some stuff into our graveyard.
Oh, yeah.
And I think it's cool that you have the reanimation in the command zone, so you can really dedicate a lot of slots to self-mill.
Because you know you're going to be able to do it with your commander, yeah.
Right.
It's a little pricey, right? 6 mana basically to do it the first time, and then 3 mana after that.
Yeah.
Brand new card, though, Hostile Negotiations. A lot of people like this card, 3 and a black for an instant. It's kind of like Fact or Fiction. You exile the top 3 cards of your library in a face-down pile, and then you exile the other 3 cards in another face-down pile. You can look at the cards, and then you choose one of them to turn up. Turn down for what? Turn up for what? And then an opponent chooses one of those piles. That pile goes into your hand, and the other goes into your graveyard. So there's lots of interesting options here. And you can't choose how to split the cards to just 3 and 3, but you choose which one your opponent sees, and then they're like, all right, that one goes to your hand, or no, let's put that one to the graveyard. Yeah,
with Geth, it's a hard decision because you're like, you're using your graveyard. It doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
This one's crazy. It's Angel of Suffering, 3 black for a Nightmare Angel. If damage would be dealt to you, prevent that damage and mill twice that many cards.
Yeah, you might mill yourself out with this.
Be careful.
Actually.
Be a little careful. Put an Eldrazi in there or something, but you will mill.
Yeah, no kidding. Doom Whisperer, I'm surprised I don't see this more. It's a 5/5 or 6/6 flying trample for 5. You can pay 2 life to surveil 2. So you look at the cards and you choose to put them in your graveyard or back on top of your library in any order.
Yeah, that card's cracked.
Yeah, so you're just milling like crazy, and you're paying like 8 life to look at 8 different cards at the top of your library. Seems pretty good.
This one's sweet. Scion of Hollister. It's a background for 1 and a black. It says commander creatures you own have. The first time you would draw a card each turn. Instead, look at the top 2 cards of your library, put one of them into your graveyard and the other one back on top of your library, then draw a card. So it gives you an option to mill and then still get that draw.
Yep. Ultra of Dementia, classic. Sack your own stuff, reanimate it, and mill at the same freaking time.
These kind of decks also want discard outlets, just in case you get like an 8 mana creature in your hand, and you're like, I can't cast this. A cool one that I found was Bog Witch for 2 and a black. It has black, tap, discard a card, add black to your mana pool. Oh. So that is exactly the cost of Geth's activation.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Pay a black, discard the card, and you now have 3 black to do something with. Or play Necropotence. Ooh. Don't do that, because then you can't discard to your graveyard anymore.
Yeah, that's bad.
You can also play Bone Shards. You discard a card to kill a creature or planeswalker for 1 black mana, so that's just extra nice value there. And then Lethal Scheme, 2 black for a convoke card, destroy target creature or planeswalker, and then each creature that convoked it connives. So they draw a card, discard a card there. So you can convoke this for all 4 of the mana, right? Yeah, pretty good.
Pretty good. Or just put it in the graveyard yourself.
Entomb.
Buried Alive. There's a cool one called Auric Lore Mage that came out in Strixhaven, and it's 2 black for a human warlock. Has an ability that says tap, search your library for a card, put it into your graveyard, then shuffle. If it's an instant or sorcery, put a +1 counter on Auric Lore Mage.
Nice.
You're probably putting a creature in there, but you know.
Yeah, probably.
It's Entomb on a stick.
Okay, all right, very cool. So we are now past the first half of the monocolored legendaries from Phyrexia, all will be one. We have 5 more monocolored legends to talk about, including a commander that turns all of your creatures into juggernauts.
Juggernaut.
Very exciting, but before we get there, we're gonna take a quick break and hear from our mid-roll sponsors.
Hi, I'm Tanos the Toy Maker.
And I'm Ashnod the Uncaring, except when it comes to you, honey. Here to talk about MeUndies' Valentine's Day collection.
In our relationship, we try to spice things up.
I love taking breaks from human experimentation to bring Tanos little Silexy gifts, all in my super soft Racing Hearts briefs, of course.
Well, I love making toys in my XOXO loungewear. And let's just say, not all the toys are animals. Wink.
So whether you're playing with someone else or just goldfishing this Valentine's Day, do it in MeUndies' comfy and cute bralettes, undies, loungewear, and more.
Match with your favorite person or your household beast in MeUndies' collection of flirty new prints.
Everything comes in sizes from extra small to 4XL, so you can always get the perfect fit without any Ashnod's alterations.
MeUndies has a great offer for our listeners. Get 25% off your first order and free US shipping right to your door. To get 25% off your first order, free US shipping, and to chat with their incredible Cheek Squad about any questions or sizing concerns, go to MeUndies.com/command. Again, that's MeUndies.com/command.
This episode is sponsored by BetterHelp.
What has happened to me? I have changed. No longer am I Urza Lord Protector. I am Urza Planeswalker. I have become my best self, but a lesson I learned all too late is if you wish to become empowered, you don't need power stones, you can just try therapy. Working with a therapist can bring you closer to becoming the best version of you. If only I'd realized that sooner. Instead of starting a war with my brother Mishra, therapy could have equipped me to work through our conflict like adults. And if you're thinking of trying therapy, BetterHelp is a great option. It's convenient, entirely online, and more affordable than my meld cost. Heck, in my rage, I blew up a whole continent. With BetterHelp, I could have learned to manage my emotions in a much more productive manner, like macrame or something. Yes, macrame. I shall master macrame. The world shall quake at my every knot. I hear the megalomania there. Okay, I'm going to therapy now.
If you want to live a more empowered life, therapy can get you there. Visit BetterHelp.com/CommandZone today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/CommandZone.
Hello, it's me, Isu the Abominable. Here in snow, all meals are frozen. Animal, frozen. Vegetable, frozen. Puny warrior, frozen. Ugh, he's gross. But New Year is time to make change, so Isu sign up for Factor. Factor is service that deliver fresh, never frozen meals that ready to eat in just 2 minutes. It's faster and cheaper than takeout, and every meal is chef made and dietitian approved. So, they're always big healthy and big delicious to satisfy even most abominable appetites. Plus, Factor give Isu so many choices with over 30 meals to pick from each week and option like veggie, keto, or even protein plus. So, no matter your food goals, you're never left out in the cold. Get it? With all the time Isu save on hunting and cleaning, me free to pursue other New Year goals, like going to the gym. Isu the Abominable wants six-pack abdominals, huh?
Head to factor75.com/command60 and use code command60 to get 60% off your first box. That's code command60 at factor75.com/command60 to get 60% off your first box.
All right, welcome back, everyone. It's time for Phyrexia All Will Be One, the second half of the monocolored commander review. There's a lot. This is another one. Okay, let's go right into it. We're still in mono black, surprisingly.
Yeah.
This one's actually really interesting. It's Kinzu of the Bleak Coven. Wasn't Coven a thing in a set? It's a
witchy thing.
Witchy thing, yeah. But now it's a Phyrexian vampire that costs 4 in the black and is a 5/4 with flying. Whenever another non-token creature you control dies, you may pay 2 life and exile it. If you do, create a token that's a copy of that creature, except it's a 1/1 and has Toxic 1. Very cool. So this reminds me immediately of Luminous Broodmoth or Nightmare Shepherd specifically.
Very Nightmare Shepherd-y.
Yeah, but you're making little toxic copies instead.
Yeah, little toxic boys.
Yeah. So the first thing I thought of was like rinse and repeat. You are now getting another enter the battlefield ability, right?
For sure, yeah. Sack outlets and ETBs are going to be really, really strong in this deck.
And Saw in half. This card is legal. in Commander.
Good.
And in this deck, it's pretty good. So Son have 2 in the black, instant destroy target creature. If that creature dies this way, its controller creates 2 tokens that are copies of that creature, except their base power is half that creature's power and their base toughness half that creature's toughness, and you round up each time.
And Kinzu brings the one you destroyed right back, so you're going to have 3 enter the battlefields off of a Son the Half.
Yeah, it's interesting because it's not an instead trigger with Kinzu, so you Son Half, the creature dies, and then it's going to die this way, and then it's Kinzu, I believe, sees it and says whenever another non-token control dies, you can pay 2 life and exile it. So Son Half resolves, then Kinzu resolves, and you get to have 3 copies of that card now.
Seems good. What are we copying?
Noxious Gearhulk.
Yuck.
Grave Titan. Grey Merchant of Asphodel. So I think like really strong enter the battlefield abilities is one way to go. And another way is just really powerful static abilities.
Absolutely.
If you want to have 3 Crypt Gas with Son Half, or just 1 Crypt Gas that comes back, right? Because people try and kill this card really quickly.
Yeah, for sure.
Your Blood Artist, your Viscera Seer, these are all static abilities that you're totally fine if it comes back on a 1/1.
I could absolutely see Kinzu getting slotted into like Orzhov token decks because if you want to double up on your you want to be able to sack things and still have the static abilities.
Right. And you just need that last couple of creatures to sack. You'll sack, pay the 2 life. You're already gaining so much life. Yeah. Kinzu seems like a really good card in that.
So I think the best way to build this deck is also the most brutal. I don't recommend it, but I wanted to mention it. It's the Edict creatures. It's all of your Plague Crafters. It's your Gravelighter, Fleshbrag Marauder, Demon's Disciple, Merciless Executioner. There's a ton of these.
Yeah.
But all of them say when they enter the battlefield, each player sacrifices a creature, sometimes or a Planeswalker, or discard a card.
Awful.
It's
if you want to
terrible.
beat me in Commander, play a bunch of these cards.
Oh my God.
And you will beat me every
so
time.
brutal to play against. And I know somebody's going to do that with all of these because it's very powerful. You cast it, you sack it, you pay the 2 life, you bring
get
it
it
back,
again, they
you
sack
they sack again, and you sack
Yeah.
this again, and it's over.
Yeah, I think the way it works with Edicts is like the first one's okay, the second one hurts, and then by the time you get to 3 or 4, it's just board wipe.
It's a nightmare.
Yeah.
And it's going to be a very, very controlling deck, and it will likely win with one of the big black X spells, Torment of Hailfire, Exsanguinate, that kind of thing, which is just not very fun to play against and is not very fun to build.
Yeah.
And so I don't recommend it, but recognize that is a very brutal strategy.
As it goes with, it seems like with all the monocolored decks, there is one like clear, this is the brutal fast, like right with Unctis, it was infinite draw and win on that, you know, mono white Elesh Norn and says the same thing. Yeah. There's always a really mean way to build monocolored decks basically because they have to be focused because they're a single color.
But the thing that I do like about these Edict cards is that they send themselves to the graveyard immediately. So you don't even need a sack outlet. So I was like, okay, what can we look at that does that?
Yeah. Shriekmaw, great call. You evoke it for 1 in the black, and then for 2 more life. So 1 in the black, 2 life. You kill 2 non-artifact, non-black creatures.
Seems pretty good.
That's pretty sick.
Bone Shredder does a similar thing. It's a target non-artifact, non-black creature, but it has Echo.
So
you
the
don't
next
pay
turn.
the Echo cost. It'll die, and you can bring it right back.
Yep.
It's also great with Exploit.
Oh, that's right. So exploit means when you cast the spell, you can, when there's the battlefield, you can sacrifice another creature, including itself, to get the extra ability on it. So you can actually play a Sidisi Undead Vizier, exploit itself.
Yep, it dies.
Pay 2 life.
Yep, bring it back.
Bring it back. So now you're demonic tutoring for 2 cards.
Yeah, and you either leave the 1/1 with Death Touch and Toxic, or you sacrifice something else, or you just sacrifice it again and you paid 5 mana to tutor 2 cards to your hand.
Yeah, that's nuts.
Seems pretty good.
Fell Stinger's cool. And when it exploits a creature, target player draws 2 cards and loses 2 life. So then that's 3 mana and 2 life to draw 4 cards, lose 4 plus
life,
6 life total, I guess.
6 life total.
Yeah.
Still good. 3
Still
mana,
good.
3 mana, 4 cards. I'll take it.
Yeah, still good.
Vulture's Haven does a similar thing. It does exploit and draw some cards.
Yeah. I think that is obviously the most powerful way to use exploit. It's just when you can do it again.
Yeah, just
especially
immediately do it again.
Yeah, but sack outlets are just so good in this deck because, again, you just want to wait for the creatures to die.
Yeah, so Yawgmoth, Thran Physician is going to be great in this deck. He's a really solid sack outlet, and it will help you like reuse those ETBs that are so powerful in black. So your Grey Merchant of Asphodels.
Yep.
Your Abhorrent Overlord is an insane one. You make Harpies for your Devotion to Black.
Oh my goodness. Cadaver Imp even too. Just a card that enters the battlefield, returns a creature card from a graveyard to your hand.
I really liked these ones that have ETBs and also have evasion on them because that makes that toxic 1 pretty good.
Oh, right,
like Pilgrim Eye and that kind of thing. If you can sack it, you get to draw 2 lands, I think Pilgrim Eye is, and then you have a 1/1 flying with toxic.
Yeah, now notably, Kinzu does exile the creature when you use its ability, but there are going to be a lot of times when you're just going to have creatures in the graveyard and Kinzu's not out. So having something that brings stuff back is just, you're going to be happy it's there. It's not a nombo.
Yeah.
You wrote Relentless Rats as an entire topic here.
I think it's fun.
Under
so you
Kinzu?
could do a Rats deck here because they still get the +X bonus even if they're a copy token.
Oh, that's right. So Relentless Rats say gets +1/+1 for each other creature on the battlefield named Relentless Rats, and you can have any number of them.
Yeah.
So they come back as a 1/1, but they still have that static ability text, and they're still Relentless Rats.
So Kinzu protects your board in that way, and then if there's a board wipe, you can bring all your rats back, and they're still huge.
Okay.
It's pretty cool.
Hey, I'm sitting down with Kinzu. Oh, is this Edict Kinzu? No. This is Rats Kinzu.
Rats Kinzu. Icar Rats is particularly good.
Oh, man.
Because it is
awful.
1 black
Get out of
for a
here.
rat with Infect. It's a 2/1. And when it enters the battlefield, each player gets poison counter.
Wow, you're right, because it comes back as a might with Toxic 1 and Infect.
And Infect.
So now it's going to deal.
So it's ETB. Everybody gets an Infect counter. Sack it. And bring it back.
Everyone
Everybody
gets an infect counter.
And now it is as Infect
and Toxic 1.
And it's a rat.
I hope Craig is not within hearing distance of this podcast.
And there's some cool rat stuff. Chittering Witch is a great ETB that makes rats.
Yep.
There you can give rats Death Touch with Ogre Slumlord. You can give rats you control Menace with Piper of the Swarm. And there's been a lot of cool mono black rat commanders that have been printed recently, like Ashcoat of the Shadow Swarm.
Yep.
Was from Jumpstart.
Yeah, I think that's actually the best rat commander ever printed. So
Yeah.
if you're looking for a cool rat commander, it's Kinzu or it's Ashcoat.
This is my rat infect combo. Are you ready?
Okay, I'm ready.
It's Crypt Rats.
Okay.
For 2 and a black. It has an activated ability that says X. Crypt Rats deals X damage to each creature and each player. Spend only black mana on X.
Oh, it kills itself.
Yeah. Or you just give it grafted exoskeleton.
Woo!
Careful, don't kill yourself.
Don't kill yourself.
X can't be 10, but if they already have an infect counter or 2 on them, X could be 6.
Yeah, that's cool.
Pretty sweet.
Yeah, that's sweet. And you got to do it again in case they try and kill your Crypt Rats.
Yeah, there you go.
Go to equip, kill your Crypt Rats, bring it back. Okay, very cool. Yeah, Infect seems like, again, another powerful way if we're going along with the Toxic Might route. You got Flesh Eater, and Black has a ton of Infect.
These.
Skittles, Skitherix, the Blighted Agent. Dragon is definitely sort of like the big one. But you got Plague Stinger, Core Prowler.
Yeah, and it has a dice trigger. When it goes to the graveyard, you proliferate.
Oof.
So you could use it.
Oof, with a sack outlet doing it twice. Game over.
Gross.
Phyrexian Crusader, protection from red and white with just Infect, and it's a first striker.
Pretty good. Give it Toxic 2, then it gives you 3.
Yeah. Again, right? When these creatures die, they already have Infect. They keep their text box, and now they have an additional Toxic 1 on top of everything.
And don't forget, Kinzu is a 5/4 flyer. If you can give Kinzu Infect with Grafted Exoskeleton or Phyrexia, which is an aura that does the same thing, that's 2 hits, KO.
Tainted Strike.
Strike. Yeah, gross.
Very good. Yeah, in that case, if we're giving other creatures evasion, that already have evasion Infect, you got Douthie Voidwalker is really good.
What I like about Douthie is it sacks itself. So you can use Douthie and then sack it to cast the spell, and it comes back, and now it's a 1/1 with Shadow and Toxic 1.
Jeez.
Yeah. Seems okay. Douthie's good.
Seems okay. Yeah.
Sturge is similar.
Yeah, it's just a 1/1 flower, can't block. And you can sack it to draw a card. And you also have Hope of Girapur. This is really good, right? Swing with this, make that person not be able to cast non-creature spells until your next turn. And then you get another one back, do it again the next turn. You can really, this is a way for an Infect deck, I think, to like take out one player, then aim for the next one, take them out too.
Any of these evasive creatures that have sack abilities, I think, are going to be very strong. Like Ginger Brute is great. You can just sack it, gain 3 life, bring it back, and now you have a 1/1 unblockable with Toxic. Pilfering Imp does the same thing. You can take a card out of their hand, and it comes back. You've got a 1/1 flyer with Toxic.
Grim Hireling, whenever one or more creatures you control deal combat damage to a player, you create 2 treasure tokens.
Yeah, if you're trying to deal combat damage in black, you are not leaving Grim Hireling at home.
Yeah, very good. All right, well, moving on. That was good card. Good. Card powerful.
More mono black commander, and it's the most boring of the bunch. I'm sorry, guys, but we got to talk about it. It's Vran Executioner Thane.
Cool name, though. 1 in the black for a 2/2 Phyrexian Vampire. Whenever one or more creatures you control die, each opponent loses 2 life, and you gain 2 life. This ability triggers only once each turn.
They did not print a better Blood Artist, unfortunately.
No. But this is still, I think, good if you have a board state where you have this out or a Blood Artist and you can have 4 creatures to sacrifice over the 4-turn cycle.
Right.
Because that's 8 life, or that's 6 life from your opponents, right? And that seems like a lot.
I think this is well balanced to be a commander. I'm very glad it says only once per turn. This would be completely insane.
Oh, absolutely. And it would just also be forced into every single Aristocrats deck ever. I still think this makes it into a lot of Aristocrats decks.
I agree. I think we're going to see more of this in the 99, particularly in the 99 of like an Ellis Ilkor Sadistic Pilgrim is just white and black, and that's roughly the same thing. But there's a lot of ways that you can make sure that you're sacrificing a creature every turn. Black's really good at making sack fodder. Yeah. And it has a lot of things that encourage you to have a creature die every turn.
Yeah, Ghoulish Procession's great. Whenever one or more non-token creatures die, you create a 2/2 black zombie creature with Decayed. But that only triggers once a turn, but that's okay. You have another thing to sack.
You're sacking a creature every turn. Morbid Opportunist draws you a card every time a creature dies.
Yep. Ophiomancer. This is probably the best card in the deck, right?
For sure. Absolutely.
Because at the beginning of each upkeep, if you control no snakes, you create a snake creature with Death Touch. Sack it. Next turn, snake. Sack it. Next turn, snake.
Every turn you can do this. It's crazy.
Thieving Amalgam.
He's
Once
back.
again comes back.
I love him. Speaking of snakes, anything that makes a token every single turn that just gives you something to sacrifice is going to be great. So Thieving Amalgam, great unclean one, is from the Warhammer decks.
Oh, this card is actually really good.
It's really solid. It's 4 and a black for a 4/5 demon. It says at the beginning of your end step, each opponent loses 2 life. Then for each opponent who has less life than you, create a 1/3 black demon creature token named Plague Bearer of Nurgle.
Yeah, so you're going to be able to do that a lot.
Yeah,
right?
It's on your end step, but like if you make 3 creatures, you're going to have a creature for each turn to sacrifice.
And your entire Aristocrat strategy is to get more life than your opponents.
Yeah.
So they're going to have less life than you.
Make tokens. You can do it. Underworld Hermit is great. We talked about Abhorrent Overlord. Both of them make tokens for your devotion to black, which is going to be high. In a mono black deck.
Now, what the heck is this card called Tombstone Stairwell?
Oh,
I bet most of you have not heard of this guy.
It's a mess.
2 black. Let's read the original text so you can decipher it. Enchant World, cumulative upkeep, 1 in the black. During each upkeep, each player puts into play, creates a Tombspawn token for each summon card in their graveyard, for each creature in their graveyard. Treat these tokens as 2/2 black creatures that are unaffected by summoning sickness and count as zombies. So they're zombies. At end of any turn, or if Tombstone Stairwell leaves play, bury all those tokens.
So on every upkeep, every player puts
a
2/2 zombies into play with haste equal to the number of creatures in your graveyard.
Wow.
So if you have the most creature cards in your graveyard,
you could just put 5 zombies out.
Yeah, you're like 5 zombies. They all die. 5 zombies.
Yeah.
They all die.
At the end of any turn.
Every turn this does.
Wow.
Yeah, it's really gross.
That is gross.
If you have a Blood Artist or a Zulapur Cutthroat in addition to your commander.
Yeah. At that point, you just have tons of triggers. You should just win with 1 turn rotation if no one can stop you.
You would think that, that cumulative upkeep is really pretty irrelevant if you have enough
I want the original
for
art
it.
for this card.
It's incredible,
It's
right?
also illustrated by someone named Dom with an exclamation point.
Dom's
I've never
great.
seen that
Dom.
before either. Wild.
It's a sweet one.
Okay, and then sack outlets.
Gotta have them.
Viscera Seer, Yeheni, Undying Partisan. You can also use cards like Deadly Dispute to sack creature for value at
only
instant
need 1
speed.
creature to die, so those spells are actually quite good in this deck.
Yeah. Dimir Houseguard allows you to just sack creatures to regenerate it.
Yeah, it also has
Pretty cool.
Transmute, which is a tutor for any 4-drop in your deck. And in black, there's some pretty good ones.
Yeah, Cryptghast, Deadly Rollick, Pitiless Plunderer, all very, very good.
Yeah, super strong in a deck like this.
Yeah, I like that.
Cool.
All right, cool, Vran. Probably a 99 card, though.
Yeah, I think we'll see most of them in the 99.
All right, next up, finally, Mono Red.
We're on to red.
Oh,
Want to read this one?
Slow Bad. Iron Goblin.
Golem.
Goblin.
Goblin? I wrote Golem. He's not a Golem.
He's not a Golem, but I can totally see.
That was the multicolored.
You were going
commander.
Bosch Iron Golem.
Yeah,
right?
I did. I just finished Golem.
This is Slow Bad
Hilarious.
Iron Goblin.
Yeah, there's Golem.
There's the Golem, yeah. You know, they're kind of doing this with UNCTIS and with Slow Bad.
Excuse me.
Obviously, these versions are Phyrexian, sad.
Yeah.
Actually, great. So cool. 2 in a red for a 3/3 legendary creature, Phyrexian Goblin Artificer. Tap, sacrifice an artifact, add an amount of mana equal to the sacrificed artifact's mana value. Spend this mana only to cast artifact spells or activate abilities of artifacts. Cool. So again, this is like that Power Stone text.
It's actually not.
Yeah, you're right. It's actually not. But it's similar.
Yeah, it's Power Stone rocks you can use to cast any activated abilities. This is only for activated abilities of artifacts.
Oh, right. So you can't. Okay, it has to be on an artifact. Okay.
Yeah.
So it's even more restrictive then.
Yes, and it also can't be used for triggered abilities of artifacts. So I wanted to mention that because Nim Deathmantle is actually quite good in this deck. It has a triggered ability that it's like when the equipped creature dies, you pay 4. But you can't use slow bad mana to pay for that 4.
It's a triggered ability.
It's a triggered ability rather than an activated ability.
Same with Mana Vault. You have to pay it and during at the beginning of your upkeep. So it's not like you can just pay 4 into it. It's like if you look at, all the other big mana rocks like Basalt Monolith, those have abilities that you can pay with
you
slow
could
bad.
absolutely pay into a Basalt Monolith.
Okay, cool. But this seems really powerful. Again, in the 99.
Yeah.
Because every big mana artifact deck is going to love this card, right? You sacrifice something, you get into the graveyard, and then boom, you have 7 mana to play with.
Yeah, like Bosch Iron Goblin.
Maybe there's a little goblin sitting in the control.
Yeah. Maybe that's it. Maybe
it's slow bad.
Maybe slow bad's in his head.
Yeah, in his head. Yeah, so Bosch obviously wants to sacrifice big artifacts already. Slow bad just gives you another way to even ramp into Bosch later in the game.
Yeah.
Mishra Eminent One just creates tons of artifacts. You're already going to make a bunch of artifacts, and so now you have slow bad to help cast those big stuff.
Yeah.
And then Mishra's going to copy them.
The Warforged ones.
Yeah, exactly.
Because they're copies, so they have the CMC.
Oh, they are copies. You're right. Oh, copies. Oh, so good.
Right? I think so.
To create a token that's a copy?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. So that'll have the CMC of whatever you make a copy of.
If it doesn't, then we were wrong. And
then
that's all.
mark a tally down. I'll take that one.
Nice, sick. Osgir the Reconstructor, similar thing. You're trying to sack artifacts, bring back sick ones. And I really think you're just trying to play Portal to Phyrexia. This card is a house. 9 mana, enter the battlefield. Each opponent sacks 3 creatures. And then it kind of does a Shieldred thing on your upkeep, except it's from any creature, any graveyard.
Reanimate something from any graveyard.
Yeah.
It's very, very strong.
I think this card is going to be a menace to the format for a bit here. You're going to see a lot of Portal to Phyrexia.
It's really something. So I think this deck really wants to maximize the amount of mana you're making. You want to cast high CMC stuff for low mana.
Okay.
So something like Oxida Golem is very good in the deck. It's a 6 mana artifact creature that has affinity for mountains.
Oh.
So if you have 4 mountains, this thing costs 2 and sacks to make 6 artifact red mana. Or like Sojourner's Companion has affinity for artifacts. Anything with affinity for artifacts is going to have a high CMC, and you're going to be able to cast it for cheap. So this is a 7 CMC spell, for example.
Yeah, it's pretty good. You can also sneak attack in your big stuff, and because sneak attack doesn't exile the cards, they just go away to the graveyard. Why not sneak attack out your Bosch and then use your slow bad to sack it and get 8 mana?
Yeah.
Same thing goes with Arms Race is really similar. There's also Perforos, blood something. I don't know. The newest Perforos also puts big artifacts out. Bronze-blooded Golem.
Yeah. I knew it was very blood-blooded.
Very blood. Ugin's Nexus.
Great thing to sack.
Yeah, you can sack this and you get to take an extra turn after this one. Mono red extra turns with Ugin's Nexus. Pretty darn good.
I love sacrificing a coveted jewel with this. This is a 6 mana artifact. When it enters the battlefield, you draw 3 cards and it taps for 3 mana of any color.
So it gives you the mana, 3 of the mana back pretty quickly.
And it has a little bit of a downside. It's like whenever a creature deals combat damage to you, that creature's controller can steal the coveted jewel, but slow bad sacrifices it. So you pay 6, you tap this thing you draw 3 cards, you tap this thing for 3 red mana, then you sacrifice it and you get 6 red mana back. Now you have like net 3 mana and you've drawn 3 cards.
Yeah, that's really
Seems
good.
very strong.
Ruin Grinder is 5 and a red. When it dies, each player may discard their hand and draw 7 cards. So this is just a way for you to have a wheel on a stick that also, right, importantly with wheel, you need more mana. So you instantly get 6 mana from Ruin Grinder when you sacrifice it. That's pretty cool.
Ingenuity Engine is a card I like a whole lot. It's a 7 mana artifact with Cascade, and it says 1 tap, sacrifice an artifact, return target artifact you control to its owner's hand.
Oh, okay.
So you could sacrifice a treasure, return to Ingenuity Engine, and recast it for Cascade.
Nice.
Or you could just cast it to Cascade and then sacrifice it and use that mana for something else.
Yeah. Retributive One is an old M20 card. It says when it's put into the graveyard from the battlefield, it deals 5 damage to any target. So you get a little bit of extra stuff there.
Yeah, I think it's a nice little removal spell in here.
Yeah.
You could always steal something to sacrifice. Treasure Haver loves to do this.
Yeah, whenever an opponent taps an artifact for mana, gain control of that artifact until the end of your next turn. Typically, threaten effects and steal effects aren't so great because they go back, but not when you have a sack outlet. Typically, you see this with like red-black decks.
Yeah.
But this is artifact specifically, which is kind of cool.
Yeah. Hellkite Tyrant also steals artifacts when you deal combat damage to them. So
Yeah.
steal their artifact and sacrifice it for mana.
Yeah, same with Opportunistic Dragon, takes an artifact, very good. And then if you also like are making token copies of stuff like Feldon of the Third Path, you sacrifice something and you choose, hey, you know what? I'm going to get that creature back on the battlefield. And it's now an artifact in case there are some
In case there wasn't.
Yeah, and then you can use Slowbad to sack it. That's cool.
Yeah. I like Mimic Vat a whole lot in this deck too. It's a 3-mana artifact that has imprint. Whenever a non-token creature dies, you may exile that card. If you do, return all other cards exiled with Mimic Vat to its owner's graveyard.
One at a time, please.
Just one, and then it says 3 tap, create a token that's a copy of a card exiled with Mimic Vat. It gains haste, exile at the beginning of the next end step. So notably, you can use slow bad mana to activate Mimic Vat.
Oh, right.
If you want to, if you're untapping him, or if you have a ton of this extra like Power Stone mana, it can go into the Mimic Vat.
You probably want to play Liquid Metal Torque in this deck too, then.
Probably.
So you could turn Feldon into an artifact and then use Slowbad's mana for that too.
There you go.
Yeah, very cool. Jax is the Troublemaker, also very good in this deck.
Yeah.
You can tap red, discard a card, create a token that's a copy of another target creature you control. It gains haste, and then when it dies, you draw a card.
Yeah, so if you...
Cool.
Yeah, make a token copy of a Wormcoil Engine, and then you sacrifice it, and you draw a card, and you make the 2 things, and you add 6 artifact mana. That seems okay.
There's probably a way to go infinite in this deck, right?
There's definitely a way, and we'll get to that in a second. But here's the way: it's Thornbite Staff. Thornbite Staff. It says blah 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 blah, and then it says whenever
a creature,
and then it says whenever a creature is put into a graveyard from play, untap this creature.
Very good. 1,000-year elixir, once again up to the batting plate. We'll pay 1 mana, untap a target creature.
Patriarch Seal is back. Anytime you have a creature with tap, commander with tap, you want to untap it.
Yep.
And here's how we go infinite, Jimmy. It's Spine of Ish-Sa.
Ah, yeah. 7 mana artifact. When it enters the battlefield, destroy target permanent. When it's put into the graveyard, you bring it back to your hand. Wait a second. Tap.
So,
put it into the graveyard.
Yeah. If it's equipped with the Thornbite Staff, if you have Slowbad with Thornbite Staff on it, you cast Spine of Ish-Sa, you blow up a creature,
untap Slowbad,
and trigger on the stack. You sacrifice the Spine of Ish-Sa, it goes back to your hand, and use
Slowbad
the
untaps.
mana.
You got 7 mana, play it again.
Yep, and blow up another creature.
Once you start blowing up permanents, it's a little different because that will not untap Slowbad with the Thornbite Staff. But yeah, you kill every creature on the battlefield.
Yep. For as long as you want, and it's still in your hand.
You also can just blow up a permanent and then just get 7 mana and play it again.
Yeah, I think Spine of Ish-Sa seems insane in this deck.
Yeah, that card only keeps going up. I remember thinking, it's card's falling out of favor, and then, you can
do some gross stuff with it.
Yeah, you can
Mishra
do stuff with it.
does some gross stuff with it.
Mishra does some very gross stuff with it. Okay, we have all this mana. We can put it into artifacts. How do we get some mana? What do we do with this mana?
What are we doing? We have so much mana. Phyrexia, Portal to Phyrexia, for sure. We definitely do that. One that I thought was cute was Summoning Station. It is a 7 mana artifact that taps and says put a 2/2 colorless Pincher creature token into play.
Pincher!
And whenever an artifact is put into a graveyard from play, you may untap Summoning Station.
Oh.
So this says whenever an artifact is put into a graveyard from play, that's treasure tokens. That's clue tokens. That's anything your opponent is doing to your sacrifice to Commander Sphere.
Yeah.
Like if you sacrifice something to Slowbad, it untaps. You make another Pincher. It feels like 7 mana is a lot. But if you are making this much colorless mana that can only be spent on artifacts, this might be a really great option.
Death by pinching.
Pinch 'em to death.
You can also play Staff of Completion. We talked about that earlier. Staff of Domination. These all have abilities that you can sink some colorless mana into.
Walking Ballista. There's lots of... you can also pay equip costs with this because those are activated abilities of artifacts. So this is great. Helm of the Host deck.
Oh, make multiple Slowbads?
Why not? Make multiple Slowbads or make multiple copies, and you can sack the copies for mana and use the mana to move the... That seems pretty good to me.
Yeah, pretty
This one's dumb. It's Colossus of Akros.
Yeah, 8 mana, 10/10 defender, indestructible. You can monstrosity it for 10 mana, and it gets 10+1/+1 counters. And then as long as Colossus is monstrous, it has trample and can attack as though it didn't have defender.
Yeah, it's a 20/20 indestructible trample.
That might kill people.
That seems fun.
Yeah.
I'm into it.
That definitely will kill people. I like this one, Mana Laundering. I think that's why I want to refer to it from here on out, because I'm always just like, what is that card that can change your mana into other mana? Oh, I forget.
Yeah, I've heard this term before, so I can't claim it as my
cool
own.
that
but
you
it's
came
pretty,
up with that term.
You're right.
Rachel Weeks invented Mana Laundering. You heard it here first.
So yeah, if you have all that artifact mana and you don't have any artifacts in your hand, what do you do?
Gemstone Array, great card. 4 mana, 2 mana. You can put a charge counter on it, and they can remove a charge counter to add 1 mana of any color of any mana color. So you have all this extra mana. You're pumping 2 into this each time to put charge counters, and then that can turn into just regular casting mana.
Yeah, Basalt Monolith, which we mentioned before, is a great way to filter that mana.
Yeah,
you can pay 3 artifact mana to untap your Basalt Monolith, and then it taps for 3 colorless mana that you can use on anything.
Yeah, and you can also just make everything an artifact with Mycosynth Lattice, and then every single card has the ability to be sort of, tapped and cast with Slowbad's mana.
Yeah. Slagstone Refinery is really great in this deck as well. It's whenever a non-token artifact goes to the graveyard, you make a Power Stone token. You're going to have something to do with that Power Stone mana because you're going to have something to do with that.
Yeah, your whole deck is built around that idea.
Getting free mana rocks every time you sack is pretty good.
Yeah, and then you have a bunch of different ways to get stuff out of the graveyard. This is a mono-red artifact deck. So Goblin Welder and Goblin Engineer. Welder's really powerful. Scrap Trawler, you can get into crazy cycles with this.
There's got to be
Mirror
something
Retrievers.
with Scrap Trawler, because it's whenever he goes to the graveyard, you cast it, you get something back. I'm sure you can go infinite with Scrap Trawler.
Oh, yeah. If you can't, I don't know, look at your board state again. Maybe it's there.
Yeah, it feels like you definitely can. This one is kind of fun. It's Pia's Revolution.
Oh, yeah.
2 and a red for an enchantment. Whenever a non-token artifact is put into your graveyard from the battlefield, return that card to your hand unless target opponent has Pia's Revolution deal 3 damage to him or her.
It's kind of like Athreos.
It's a little bit of an Athreos for artifacts, and if you're sacking stuff, it just gives you the colorless mana to recast that thing.
Yeah,
so it's like they have to pay the 3 life every time you do it.
Cool.
It might not be worth it, but I think it's kind of cute.
Yep. Underworld Breach, you're going to have a heavy graveyard with tons of stuff in it, so go nuts.
Yeah.
Everyone, go
It
nuts.
might even be a deck for Scrap Welder. It might. That card's pretty bad, but it might.
Yeah, I've tried to put Scrap Welder in a few decks now. It
not quite.
Doesn't make it.
All right, we have a second mono red artifact commander, and he rules.
Yeah, it might be a she. I don't know. Dragons are always hard to tell.
Hard to gender this one.
In this case, it's they Chisgoria, Forge Tyrant. This card is so cool.
It's so cool.
6 red for a legendary creature, dragon, 5/4, and that's it. Nope, just kidding. It's got affinity for artifacts, so it costs 1 less to cast for each artifact you control, so it could just cost red. Has flying and haste, because when it enters the battlefield, whenever Chisgoria attacks, exile the top 5 cards of your library. You may cast an artifact spell from among them this turn. If you do, it has affinity for artifacts. What?
It's really fun.
It's not for free, but if you already have, let's say, 6 artifacts and you get a 6-drop artifact, you cast for 0.
Oh my god, it's so fun. Okay, so obviously, a ton of artifacts in this deck. You need a very, very high density. You want to make sure you're hitting off of Chisgoria
every time.
You want to make sure you have a huge affinity for artifacts so you can cast your commander for as cheap as possible.
Yeah, you can't just have high drops because you have to build up to even casting Chisgoria in the first place.
And be careful when you're attacking with Chisgoria, because those cards that you exile, those are gone.
Yeah,
it's not put them in a random order and put them on the bottom. No, they are exiled.
Goodbye.
So you could exile a lot of your deck with this thing.
yeah, especially if you have multiple combat spells and all that stuff too.
Yes.
Okay, so let's talk about this. Rachel, I think you're the one to lead this off because you have some experience with Chisgoria. That's all we'll say.
A tease. We want to get a ton of artifacts on the battlefield. So anything cheap that is going to make a lot of artifacts, either tokens or copies or anything, is going to be really good in this deck. Breya's Apprentice is a 2 and a red for a human artificer. When it enters the battlefield, create a 1/1 colorless Thopter creature token with flying, and it has an activated ability that says tap, sacrifice an artifact, choose 1, exile the top card of your library until the end of your next turn. You may play that card, and target creature gets +2/+0 until end of turn.
Yeah.
So it's 2 artifacts because it itself is an artifact, and it draws when you sack artifacts.
Yeah, it's similar to the 1 and a red lieutenant that makes a hasty Thopter as well.
Yes, Loyal Apprentice. Is great. Stack.
Lieutenant Apprentice. Same thing, right? Professional Facebreaker. Have to mention this card at least once in a mono red artifact
Had to show
deck.
up, yeah.
Yeah, whenever one or more creatures you control deal combat damage to a player, create a treasure token, and then you can sack any of your treasures to exile the top card of your library, and you can play that card this turn. So this is just great late game for just... Right. The big thing with Chisgoria is you just want to have a bunch of treasures out if you can get them quickly, and then that can just cast Chisgoria almost immediately.
This card makes a ton of treasure tokens. It's Noble's Purse. This is a 2-mana artifact. When it enters the battlefield, tapped and with 3 coin counters on it. You tap, remove a coin counter from Noble's Purse, create a treasure token.
So itself is an artifact and creates more.
And it makes more. It can make up to 4 artifacts. And I want to do a quick reminder on how affinity for artifacts works with treasure tokens, because it counts the number of artifacts you have before you've spent the mana to cast it.
Right.
So you can both have the treasure token will reduce the casting cost of Chiskoria, and then you can sack it to pay the red.
Yeah, so technically, if you only have 6 treasures on the board, what you do is say, I'm going to cast Chiskoria. I am now going to pay for costs. What does this cost? Well, it costs 6 less, so it's just 3 red mana because of affinity for artifacts. And then you can sacrifice 3 treasure tokens to pay the 3 red and get her out.
Yeah, seems really strong. I love Inspired Tinkering in this deck. I'm really high on this card. It's Jessica's Will at home, and it's still great.
Jessica's Will at home, it's true.
4 and a red, exile the top 3 cards of your library until the end of your next turn. You may play those cards, create 3 treasure tokens.
Yeah, that's actually in some ways better than Jessica's Will because you do need to have your commander out for both things to happen. This gives you both, but costs a little bit more.
Immediately. And you have 2 turns to cast those spells instead of the 1.
Yeah. I actually like that they've been adding that for Impulsive Draw. It makes it way better, which is have a whole extra turn to cast those cards in case you tap out.
Yeah. Visions of Ruin is another great way to make treasure tokens. It's each opponent sacrifices an artifact. For each artifact sacrificed this way, you create a treasure token.
Yes, we couldn't talk about this one with the Atraxa.
With Atraxa.
This is the only mono red card with this flashback of 8 red. Costs X less to cast, where X is the greatest mana value of a commander you own.
Which
so
is
in this
9.
case, 9. So this just costs red. And then you get to make everyone stack an artifact, and you make more treasure tokens.
Yeah.
When it's in the graveyard, of course.
Yeah. You definitely want artifact lands in this deck. Your Darksteel Forge, your Treasure Vault, Power Depot.
Darksteel Citadel.
Darksteel Citadel, excuse me.
Darksteel Golem.
I'm just combining all of the magic cards. Anything that you can do to get your affinity for artifacts as high as possible.
Yeah, and quickly too, right? Because you want to be able to play Chiskoria sooner rather than later.
Yeah. All right, what are we casting? What's the fun part?
You're casting Portal to Phyrexia for like 2 mana.
It's Portal to Phyrexia, probably.
Yeah. You're casting Mirror Battlesphere for like free. And then that creates more tokens.
So then your next spell can be bigger.
And then you cast Blightsteel Colossus.
For free.
For free.
Yeah, what about a Platinum Empyrean?
For free.
Yeah, that seems good.
What about Bonte's Ether Heart? Multiple, right? Instead of multiple combats, why not just take another turn?
Go ahead.
Yeah. Now, you do want to be careful that you don't load your deck up with just like all the 9 drops, because that really makes your early draws just way potentially worse.
You need these like sort of bad 2 drops like Noble's Purse to really lead.
Bad? You just said that thing can make 4 treasure.
I mean, it's really good. Yeah. It's really good. But these cards that feel bad.
Yeah, exactly. And they may not be as impactful, but they really do pay off down the road.
Yeah.
And of course, if you can play your own Dockside Extortionist, go for it.
Fine.
In a really high power table, you could presumably Dockside Extortionist and get Chiskoria out like on turn 1 if you're like at the end of the turn rotation, right? If everyone just dumps stuff out.
Gross.
Yeah. That's pretty crazy.
All right. You have an affinity for artifacts. You love them. I get it. Jimmy gets it. We love artifacts too.
Who doesn't?
You're really, really, really vulnerable to an artifact wipe in this deck.
Yeah.
So I think you're going to need dedicated slots to protect your board. If there is a Vandal Blast, you will get wrecked.
Yeah. Darksteel Forge, however, gives them all indestructible. That's a great way to do it.
Yep.
Scrap Mastery is living death, but for artifacts, this lets you, after a Vandal Blast, get them all back. So that's kind of like a recovery route as well. I like this a lot.
Soul of New Phyrexia. It's an old one they used to put in a lot of Commander products. They don't anymore, but it is a 6 mana artifact creature with trample, and it has an activated ability that says 5 permanents, 5:permanents you control gain indestructible until end of turn. And
you can do the same thing if Soul of New Phyrexia is in your graveyard.
In your graveyard.
Yeah, that's actually really cool. You could use Slow Bad mana.
You could use Slow Bad mana to do it.
Well, speaking of Slow Bad, there's the original Slow Bad who looks a little more flimsy. He's 1 and a red for a 1/2.
He's not Phyrexian yet. Give him. He'll be fine.
He buffed up. See, that's why being complete is kind of cool.
Yeah, you're ripped.
But Slow Bad can sack an artifact to make another artifact indestructible. So your treasures become, mini heroic interventions or whatever.
Yeah. This is pretty good in the deck. It's Gerard's Hourglass Pendant.
Oh, yeah.
It is 1 mana for a legendary artifact with flash. If a player would begin an extra turn, that player skips that turn instead. So careful with your extra turns. Careful. And then it says 4 and tap, exile Gerard's Hourglass Pendant. Return to the battlefield tapped all artifact, creature, enchantment, and land cards in your graveyard that were put there from the battlefield this turn.
Right. This has flash, so you wait for the board wipe to go off.
Yeah.
Flash this in, tap it, 5 mana total. They all come back.
Yeah. If there is an artifact wipe, notably this doesn't work when it's on the battlefield.
Yeah. You have to wait, otherwise it itself goes away, right?
Yes, it'll just get blown up. But you can use it early to up your affinity if you really need it.
Yeah, totally. And of course, you have a few non-artifact artifacts in the deck because you have to have supporting characters. Then that's why you play Liquid Metal Torque, by the way, because it helps you out. Goblin Welder, we talked about this before. Yep. Even just discarding earlier Portal to Phyrexia and then welding out a treasure for that is just like, oh, gross.
One I really like in this deck is Passionate Archaeologist. It says commander creatures you control have, whenever you cast a spell from exile, this creature deals damage equal to that spell's mana value to target opponent. What? Portal to Phyrexia is a 9-drop.
Wow. Yeah, 9 damage to someone's face is kind of like hell. What's that shoot of it's a dragon that deals damage.
Terror of the Peaks.
Yeah. I was like, Hellkite of the 9 Hells.
This is a Hellkite of the 9 Hells.
Yeah, Blast Furnace Hellkite, 7 red for a dragon with an artifact offering. So you can cast it as though it had flash by sacrificing an artifact, and then you pay the difference in mana value. And it's flying double strike. Creatures attacking your opponents have double strike.
It's a finisher.
So Chiskoria will just smack you. Maybe get that last commander damage 10? In as well. Yeah, it's a 5/4. Oof.
Pretty good.
Oof.
Chiskoria is awesome. I'm real hyped on that.
Yeah.
And the last one is cool as well. It's another artifact deck,
but not mono red. This time it's mono colored nothing. It's colorless. No, it's Graz, Unstoppable Juggernaut.
I love Graz. It's very Graz.
Yeah. Graz in the fields, the Unstoppable Juggernaut.
Yeah, I love it.
It's an 8 mana 7/5 Juggernaut. Legendary artifact creature. Juggernauts you control attack each combat Fable, which you see on Juggernaut text. And also Juggernauts you control can't be blocked by walls. Take that, 1995 Magic. And then other creatures you control have base power and toughness 5/3 and are Juggernauts in addition to their other creature types.
What? We're all Juggernauts?
Yeah, so this is like Maskwood Nexus on a stick. An 8 mana stick, but specifically for, or Arcane Adaptation, but specifically for Juggernauts and only for creatures that are already on the battlefield and under your control. Because Maskwood Nexus and Arcane Adaptation do it for cards that are in your deck as well.
Deck and that kind of thing, yeah. All right, so what are we turning into Juggernauts? They're going to be little. They're going to be quick. They're going to be evasive.
You called them Juggernets.
The Juggernets.
It's like a roller derby almost. Oh my goodness.
They're a kick line.
Yeah, I love this because they make them 5/3, right?
Yeah, they're 5/3s. They have their original text, but they turn into 5/3s.
And they need to be colorless too.
Exactly. This is a colorless deck. So you're going to want like Ornithopter is a free 0/2 that you could turn into a 5/3 flying.
That can't be blocked by walls.
Yeah, that too.
Ginger Brute goes from a 1/1 that already can't be blocked to a 5/3 that can't be blocked. That Ginger Brute turned into, it's a food golem. It's kind of like
it's close to a Juggernaut.
It's close to a Juggernaut, yeah.
Signal Pest is a great one. It can't be blocked except by creatures that have flying or reach, and it has Battle Cry, so it buffs up all your other Juggernauts to 6/3s.
Yeah, I really like Ebony Fly. Like it's not a creature until you want it to be.
Yeah.
So, and when it transforms into a creature, it becomes a XX where you roll a D6 and then X is the result. Yeah. And then it gives another creature flying.
Yeah.
So you got 2 Juggernauts coming at them.
Yeah, I like these creatures that are not creatures until you want them to be because your commander forces them to attack. So it leaves you with a little bit of defense if you have an Ebony Fly up or even like an Inkmoth Nexus, perhaps. It has a 5/3 with Infect is pretty scary. But it just means that when all of your other Juggernauts have attacked, you have some options back and you won't just get smacked for a whole bunch. Guardian Idol is another great option. It's a 2-mana rock that can become a 2/2.
I like making tokens in this type of deck. Hangerback Walker, when it dies, all those little 1/1 flying Thopters become 5/3 flying Thopter Juggernauts.
Also, Hangerback Walker is a base 5/3, so it's even bigger.
Oh, that's right. And because it's equal to its power, right?
Yeah.
Wow.
Wait.
Oh, no, sorry. It's plus one counter. Yeah. Sorry.
But it doesn't die if you get all the counters off it or something like that.
Oketra's Monument's really good. It says white creature spells you cast cost 1 less to cast, but who cares? Because whenever you cast a creature spell, create a 1/1 white warrior creature token with Vigilance.
Vigilance is great in this deck because they're, again, forced to attack.
Yeah.
This is a great deck for Field of the Dead. Oh my gosh.
That's right.
It's very easy to get 7 different lands in colorless decks because you can basically run all of these.
Anything that taps for colorless.
that taps for colorless. There's a ton of different lands that you can run in that base. The other category of card that Wizards has printed a lot of over the years is these Avusses.
Avus?
The Pentavus, the Triskeliavus, the Tetravus. These are usually high-cost artifacts that enter the battlefield with a certain number of +1 counters on them, and they have activated abilities that are remove a +1 counter, and they make a 1/1 artifact creature token, usually with flying.
Yeah, and they're 5/3s.
And they're base 0, so you can make a ton. So it's a 7 mana thing that comes in with the option of making 5 Thopters with flying that could be Juggernauts.
Yeah.
So that and Triskelivis is similar, Tetravis is similar, and Thopter Squadron is very similar as well. So all of those, it ups their base to be way more powerful, and then all of the tokens they make are way more powerful as well.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. There's also living weapons, so these will come in. And typically, the germs are 1/1s, but now they're 5/3s.
The germs are 0/0s.
Oh, 0/0s. I'm sorry. Yeah, and they need the weapon to survive, but now they actually survive without it. So
now they're ripped.
You can re-equip your Nettle Cyst or your Culture Complete to something else, or just have that ripped germ token come in for a ton of damage. Not a Juggernaut anymore at that point.
No, that's a Juggernaut.
Okay, so ramping seems really important. Your
Gotta have it.
8 mana. We just talked about the Avusses that are all 7 mana. I think you have to play a critical mass of mana rocks.
A ton.
Especially because you have all these other high cost cards in here.
Yeah. So you want your Thran Dynamos, these big mana rocks that tap for a ton of mana. Even Dreamstone Hedron, which I don't usually play, will tap for a ton of mana.
But it's good because you need to have some value attached.
Yeah.
Because if you're just drawing rocks at the end of the game and can't do anything with it, can't cash it in, then that sucks. Everflowing Chalice is also really good because it scales with the game itself, similarly to like Astral Cornucopia. Like later on in the game, you can cast it for even more and then instantly tap it for a bunch of mana.
Mycosynth Golem is really strong in this deck. It is an 11 mana golem that has affinity for artifacts.
Okay.
But it gives artifact creature spells you play have affinity for artifacts, which includes your commander. So if you have a lot of these ticky-tacky Thopters and stuff on the board, it really reduces the casting cost of your Avusses and of Graz himself.
And then you have Forsaken Monument, which is colorless creatures get +2/+2. And then whenever you tap a permanent for just a colorless mana, you add another one. So it turns all of your just regular 1 mana lands into Soul Rings, kind of.
Crazy. It's so good.
Yeah.
And finally, Ugin the Ineffable goes in all of these colorless decks. It says colorless spells you cast cost 2 less to cast, and then gives you a way to make tokens, which could become Juggernauts later.
Yeah. Hey, speaking of 5/3s, there's a card called Geode Golem that's a 5 mana 5/3 with trample, and when it deals combat damage player, you can cast your commander from the command zone without paying its mana cost.
Yeah, just punch through with 5/3 once, and if you're ramping, you can get that 5/3 out early, and you've got your Juggernaut down early.
You probably want to play like Swiftfoot Boots in this deck, right?
For sure, yeah.
Yeah.
You really
Give
want
a
to
little bit of
protect
hasty.
your commander once it comes down.
Yeah.
Luckily, there's a ton of really powerful cards in colorless that sort of fill in the gaps for when you don't have the colored staples. So Wandering Archaic does a great job of that.
Oh, yeah.
It's whenever an opponent casts an instant or sorcery spell, they may pay 2. If they don't, you may copy that spell. You choose new targets for the copy.
I want your rampant growth.
Yeah, you can start stealing some important stuff.
Mystic Forge is a great way to just churn through your deck. It allows you to look at the top card, and you can cast it if it's a artifact or colorless non-land card. And you can also just pay 1 life to exile the top card of your library. Just keep churning through and always finding new things.
All is Dust goes in all of these decks.
All is Dust.
Each player sacrifices all colored permanents they control. You don't control any. It's a one-sided board wipe.
Yeah. A new card from Strixhaven, Introduction to Annihilation. It's a 5 mana sorcery. You exile a target non-land permanent, but its controller does draw a card. There's also a 7 mana version, something to dust. Cling to Dust, I think. Maybe not all is Dust. It's another card. It's a 7 mana.
Scour from Existence.
Scour. What am I saying Cling to Dust for?
Cling
Scour
to Dust is a spell.
Yeah.
It's black, though.
It's black, yeah. I was going to say it's white. It's not. And then Nod of This World.
Oh, it's awesome.
It's a colorless counterspell, basically. 7 mana counter target spell or ability that targets a permanent you control. And it's going to cost 7 less if it targets this. Nod of This World costs 7 less to cast if it targets a spell or ability that targets a creature you control at power 7 or greater.
Your commander is power 7.
Nice.
So it seems good.
It's perfect in this deck.
To really make sure those 5/3s punch through, if you've just made a bunch of zombie tokens and you're like, my 5/3s, everyone could block them somehow. Glaring Spotlight is great protection and it's great evasion. It's a 1 mana artifact that says creatures your opponents control with hexproof can be the target of spells and abilities you control as though they didn't have hexproof. And 3, sacrifice Glaring Spotlight. Creatures you control gain hexproof until end of turn and are unblockable this turn.
Yeah.
So it's a huge swing and you can protect your board, which you've worked so hard to build.
Yeah. One last note about Graz is I think you could actually use Graz as a hidden commander in a deck if you can play some more colors, because in the past we have cards like, if you forgot, one of the parts of Graz says cannot be blocked by walls. And so if you play a card like Unnatural Selection, 1 in the blue enchantment, pay 1, choose a creature. Oh, sorry. in the past, I was going to say, they've tried to, because I guess Juggernauts are powerful, they specifically wrote cards to not allow you to do this. It says, on unnatural selection, 1 in the blue 1, choose a creature type other than wall, and then target creature's type becomes that type until end of turn, because they didn't want people to do this. But we still have cards like Shields of Velasvel, which is a white mana, creature's target player controls gets +0/+1, and gains all creature types until end of turn. Amoeboid Changeling can give a creature all creature types until end of turn.
You're a wall.
So there might be an interesting, like, find a support color and then build a commander in those colors and just make it mostly a Graz deck.
I honestly think Graz is just a great token finisher. I mean, this is a huge Anthem.
Yeah.
It turns all of your Thopters into 5/3s. Like, if you have a Psy deck or something like that, it's enormous overrun, especially in blue where you don't have those big overrun spells. Or in black, where you have, like, a bunch of Harpy tokens.
Yeah.
It turns them into 5/3s. I think we'll see more of Graz than people think.
Yeah, and it's going to come down. Everyone's going to go like, wait, what? And then they're going to go, oh, no. Did I just die? Are we dead? Oh, I'm dead? No one else is?
No.
Is it because I attacked you randomly that first turn instead of just choosing who to attack? I knew it.
Is it because I have all these walls?
My wall deck. Yeah, maybe you could build Graz into a weird defender deck. Like, I don't know. Okay.
Give them walls. All right. Can't block.
Those are the mono-colored commanders from one that we wanted to talk about. We didn't talk about all of them, so let us know in the comments, of course, if there are some that you thought we should have covered or you just love. Let's go and talk about our favorite commander.
Yeah.
Phyrexia All-Be-One. For mono-colored specifically.
Yes.
Mine, I'm going to say Graz. Unstoppable Juggernaut. I like big things, and I cannot lie. It just seems like a lot of fun.
I like big knots, and I cannot lie.
Yeah, I don't want to build a Eldrazi colorless deck.
Yeah.
It doesn't seem like my, I leave that to other players. I think Graz is a kind of colorless deck that I would be interested in building if I had to.
Colorless token deck is sweet.
Yeah,
that's something we've never seen before. It's very exciting. Mine was very easy. It was Chiscoria for me. It's such an exciting card.
It's a dragon.
It's a 9-mana dragon that cheats big stuff into play. It's a very cool design.
All right, what did you think was the most powerful commander from the monocolored selections today?
Yeah, I mean, we disagree on this one, but we agree on
Yeah, we agree on this one too.
The one that I picked was Unctus, Grand Metatect. Because he just is a clean infinite combo with one other card that he curves into. Like, you could pay on turn 2, you play the thing that taps. On turn 3, you play this thing, you draw your whole deck, and you cast Thassa's Oracle.
Yeah.
And the game's over.
Yeah. I went the non-infinite route. I think in that discussion, Unctus is definitely the most powerful just because it's right there that you win the game. Yeah. Other than that, I think Elesh, Norn, Mother of Machines definitely takes home the cake. It is Panharmonicon and a Torpor Orb stapled onto one card.
It's crazy.
It's crazy. It's gonna warp games, and it's gonna be an instant removal target, and it may just turn off like 70% of certain decks as well.
Yeah, I agree that I think that just generally we're going to see the most of Elesh Norn, and she is going to be the most powerful.
Yeah, I hope I don't see Unctus too often.
Yeah, Unctus.
Unless it's the cute Unctus.
Yeah, I want to build a cute one. With flying men.
Flying men Unctus, Grand Metatect. All right, to the listeners, what did you think about the monocolored selections that we talked about today from Phyrexia All-Be-One? Are you planning on building any of them?
Yeah, is there any tech we missed? Let us know what you found that's super cool with one of these commanders. We want to hear about it.
I think we missed no tech because Rachel's a genius.
If you found some sweet tech, you got to go to cardkingdom.com/command to pick up all the tech for these commander decks. They have a great selection, and they ship all of the cards that you buy in one little package. It's all taped. It comes with a sticker and a token.
So nice.
Right in your door. I trust Card Kingdom with a ton of my orders, especially when I'm building one deck all together and I want to make a big order with like 40 cards. And I know that they'll show up in one place at one time and be safe. Plus, if something's wrong, you have a great support team to contact and make sure that you get those issues resolved. So go to cardkingdom.com/command to pick up the cards that you want to play.
And then head on over to ultrapro.com/command to get the accessories for your stuff. There's really cool playmats this time around for All-Be-One. We have this hollow foil Jace sitting in front of us. The art, I think, in Magic is very different than what it used to be, but it's also so varied now, and it just gets better and better. Yeah. I heard somewhere that, like, if you count up all, let's say 1,000 fantasy art pieces were commissioned in the world last year, 700 of them would have been for Magic the Gathering.
That's incredible.
So there's tons of selection from Ultra Pro. There's going to be something that tickles your fancy, whether it's some secret lair art or the official card art that you see, or maybe even the different versions.
Sure.
You can find a lot of that stuff on ultrapro.com/command, or just check out your local game store and support them there as well. And don't forget, we're going to be at Game Nights Live in MagicCon Philly, February 17th to the 19th. Get your tickets now if you're in the area and want to attend a MagicCon. You went to MagicCon Vegas, right?
No, I couldn't go.
Oh, you didn't? Oh, it was a blast. I had
so
a ton of fun. There were some downsides and a little bit of hastiness in how it got set up, but I think ultimately they're only going to get better at doing the MagicCon setup. This time around, I'm looking forward to better commander areas, a better version of Game Nights Live, because we're improving it as well. And you got artists, vendors, you can buy cards, trade cards, do everything you need there. Card Kingdom's going to be there, Ultra Pro is probably going to be there as well. But check it out, MagicCon Philly, February 17th to the 19th, and you can meet Josh and myself, and Rachel will all be there playing games and doing fun stuff.
We are going to skip the end step this time. It's been a long episode. We want to get you out of here. So let's go straight to thank our amazing team here at the Command Zone. Thank you to Damon Lentz, Arthur Mettercroft, Lady Danger, Manson Lung, Craig Blanchett, Josh Murphy, Jake Boss, Jordan Pridgeon, Sam Waldo, Gaurav Galati, Jamie Black, Mitch Trafford, Evan Limburger, Gabriel Pozos, Megan Yep, Eric Lem, and
how's it?
Josh Lee Kwai.
Josh Lee Kwai. And with that, we say, Josh Lee, bye-bye.
Thank you for your attention. For further inquiries, send an email to commandcast@rocketjump.com or ask us on Twitter @JFWong and @JoshLeeQuai. See you later, alligator.
Greetings, humans.